Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this AFC Championship Week matchup preview show. It's a pretty special show. I'm pretty excited. I got a great show for you guys tonight. I'm joined by three great guests. I got former Buffalo Bills offensive lineman Jeremiah Sirles. Joining me, we broke down what he's seen from the Bills offensive line this year, Josh Allen's maturity, and difficulties on the road in a hostile environment. Jeremiah thankfully recorded with me earlier today, so I'll play that with you for you guys here in a little bit. Also, I'll be joined tonight by the co-host of the Kingdom Says podcast, Kyle Henning. He'll break down the Chiefs' perspective of this big matchup, and I'll play that for you here in a little bit. And the third guest is Don, the head of Do Champions social media. He's going to help me break down this massive matchup from a Bills perspective. But first up, I'll do the world-famous reverse power rankings. We'll do the conference championship edition of that. And then we will go over and preview the NFC Championship game before we jump right into the main event. So sit with me just for a minute, and we will get fired right up.
Come on, man. Only on Do Champion Network.
Everything you need, nothing you don't. Some may like it, few just won't. Everything you need, nothing you don't. Some may like it, few just won't. Buffalo blueprint for analytics and new shit. Take pen in hand, mic in his hand. Welcome to the Buffalo blueprint. Everything you need. Everything you need. Everything you need, nothing you don't. Some may like it, few just won't. Everything you need, nothing you don't. Some may like it, few just won't. Buffalo blueprint for analytics and new shit. Jake pen in hand, mic in his hand. Welcome to the Buffalo blueprint. Everything you need. Everything you need.
All right, well, welcome into the Buffalo Blueprint. This is the Conference Championship edition. First up, I'd like to thank a couple sponsors, and then we will get started. I'd like to thank our show sponsor all season, Mackenzie Farms and Happy Holiday Tree Farms, for supporting the show all season long. Without their great support, a show like this wouldn't be possible. We use sponsors to be able to purchase the streaming platform we use, a lot of the data we use, and things like that. And so without sponsors, shows like this wouldn't be possible. So thank you again to Mackenzie Farms and Happy Holiday Tree Farms for supporting the show. And then now I'd like to play a couple of our network sponsors, and then we will get started.
For the best Italian food in Western New York, Elliot Apollos, call 716-825-3675. The Lardon Construction Group.
Fubo TV, the official streaming service of Do Champions. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Do Champions.
For all your summertime needs, beauty pools, as well as kayak pools.
CX Chronicles, your total customer solutions focused manager. W.GG, the official energy drink of Do Champions.
Hey, Sons of Erie, our artwork looks better on your walls. Hamburg Brewing, please visit our tap room on Boston State Road, Hamburg, New York. And finally,
Fat Boy Surf Club for all your surfing needs.
All right, let's welcome our first guest on. Don is our social media manager, head of the social media department at Do Champions. Don, welcome into the show. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, what's up? Glad we're doing a show right now. It's AFC Championship week. I would say it doesn't get any better, but like 2 weeks from now, it could be a little bit better. But we'll get to
I think
that.
that's a great place to start, man. I mean, a lot of people say like how nervous they are for this and, you know, what it could mean and stuff like that. I just say like, thankful we still have a Bills game in 2 days, right? We're still alive. We're still
It's
playing.
so exciting.
Right. I mean, we haven't had this in a couple of years now, and especially in a year where the off-season narratives were, you know, this is a rebuilding year, a down year, and and whatnot, and to be on this ride and to have a chance, to go to the Super Bowl is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's epic. We haven't been here in 4 years.
Yep.
I mean, before that, it was the 90s. So
Yep.
I'm glad I get to watch my second game, AFC Championship game. Hopefully, get to watch my first Super Bowl, but I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. I know you and I had talked earlier today. Jake and I are in a survivor pool, and we're ride and dying with the Bills this weekend, man. We were thinking of going Chiefs, if the Bills win, great, but said screw it, ride and die. And what are you thinking for the game? I mean, is it going to be a close one? You think is it first to 30 points in this game? It feels like that's the
I'm
magic
kind of
number.
leaning that way. We're definitely going to get into the game scripts and matchups
Yeah.
and things like that. But yeah, overarching, I think first to 30. I think whoever gets over 30 wins this game. You look at the Chiefs this year; they haven't scored over 30 very often. The games they lost, their opponents scored.
They haven't scored
points.
over 30, by the way.
They did once in overtime, but not in regulation, right? They needed to.
No, it was
field goal to
30 to 20, 30 to 24 in that
right,
game. Right,
over. They scored 30 though.
Yeah, they scored 30, but they didn't score over
Right.
30. Yeah.
Right. So
Either
I'm saying
way.
whoever gets to 30 in this game.
Meanwhile, the Bills
yeah,
did that. We'll break that down.
Yeah, they did 8 straight times.
Eight or something like that. Yeah.
Sure. All right. Well, first up, let's start with the reverse power rankings. I do this every week for the whole season. We started with all 32 teams. Then we started with just the playoff teams in the wild card round. Then we went down to the divisional, and now we're down to 4 teams left. So I rank them every week in reverse order. So first up, number 4, I got Washington Commanders. I really like them. I think the issue that Sam Cosmi injury is huge for them. He's their best offensive lineman, and he's now out. And going against Philly, who's got a great defensive line, especially interior, I think could be massive. I mean, Cosmi's a guard, and that's just a really big loss for them. They already don't run the ball really efficiently, and so I don't know, man. That's tough for me. And so that, and then you look at their secondary. Lattimore struggled. That secondary has struggled at times. I'm not sure that their defensive line and their front seven can generate.
They
pressure.
struggle to stop the run, and Wagner's hurt.
They do. They struggle to stop the run, and so
Bobby
for
Wagner's
those reasons,
hurt.
I have them at 4. I really like what Jaden Daniels is doing. I think that element, all 4 of these quarterbacks, right? They all can move, they all can scramble, they all can run, and that element it just keeps an offense on schedule.
I want
offense. Go ahead.
I want to interrupt you there. What do you think? You said all these quarterbacks left are mobile, can move. What do you think about the injury to Hurts right now? He said he's going to wear a knee brace. It's going to play a factor.
For sure. So you're getting ahead of it a little bit because we're previewing just the Washington here, but no, I do think that matters. And so for me, I think Jaden Daniels, in his running ability and his scrambling ability, off script ability will help them against a very tough Philly defense. I just, can the Washington defense do enough? You saw it against Detroit. They were able to force some turnovers, create some pressure, limit the running game. And, can they do that in this game? Can they sell out to stop Saquon and force Philly to just throw the ball? We're going to get into that game here in a little bit more deeply, but that's kind of why I have Philly at 4. I think they have the most holes and weaknesses right now of the 4 remaining teams.
Washington at 4, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, Washington at 4. I have Philly at 3, and the reason why I have Philly at 3 is Jalen Hurts. He hasn't been throwing the ball great. He's been not, he had the concussion, he had the hand or wrist deal. Now he's got the knee injury, and so we'll see if that hampers his mobility. Is that going to affect the tush push? Are they going to have to go to Goddard? That's just elements of that worry me. When he's forced to stay in the pocket, he kind of panics. You saw that late in that game. He kind of panics a little, takes some bad sacks. And so I'm concerned about in this game. Is he going to feel rushed, on drop back sets? Can Washington get out to an early lead? I don't know. So I think I really like Philly's roster. I just don't think they're healthy right now. Also, their center, has back injury, and so they might have to go to Landon Dickerson, and then that's changing 2 positions, and they got to put a different guard in, and so there's just some things with Philly that has me worried about them more so than the two teams I have ahead of them in the AFC Championship game. So, which I have Buffalo at 2. They're not healthy. They're a little banged up. We're gonna get into that a little more in depth. But Taylor Rapp's already ruled out. We're not sure about Christian Benford with the concussion. So those are a couple key pieces. Milano's got a little nicked up, and so they're just not as healthy as you would like to see. This is the healthiest they've been in the playoffs, but I have them at 2. They're also on the road in this game as well. So I have them at 2. I have Kansas City at 1, back-to-back defending champs. I've had them at 1 for a while now. They're healthy. They got everyone back. I think it's going to be a super tough game, and Kansas City is going to have everybody ready to go.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I wouldn't change. I think I can see a clear path to how Washington wins that game. And I just don't know if they'll be able to execute it. I think that path, we'll get into it, but they got to control the clock and keep the ball away. And basically lock down Saquon. Hurts, I don't think is going to end up being much of a threat to run the ball. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but that really concerns me for them. I know when you and I were talking about these games earlier that
we can just dive right into that game now. I mean,
we can. Let's go for it.
So it's the earlier game on Sunday, so I usually break down whatever games are ahead of the Bills game. So that game's Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern. Washington going to Philly. Right now, Philly is favored by 6.5. And the over-under is 47.5. Does either of those jump out at you, the spread or the over-under?
The spread did. The 6.5. I felt like that opened at like 4.5, and I told somebody it was going to close at 6 or 6.5 earlier this week. I almost just want to buy half. If I was a betting person on that game, I'd buy half a point and just get the 7. But Washington's shown that they have the ability to stay in these games. Philly is not Detroit. And I say that as in their offense is not as explosive, but their defense is significantly better than Detroit. I think I said it post-game after the Denver game when the Bills played Denver, said during that post-game that I would not be surprised if Detroit got knocked out in the first round. And their first round. And they did because their defense was so banged up they couldn't stop anybody, and their offense turned the ball over and there was no room for mistakes.
And they lost 3 more guys during the game too.
During the game, which is brutal for them, but it was kind of like the writing was on the wall for them, and I'm not surprised that they got knocked out.
Yeah.
I feel like the injuries to both of those teams in the NFC Championship game almost even out with each other. Like the Hurts injury is pretty big, like that allows some, I don't know how effectively they're going to be able to run that read option and the RPOs. Yeah. And if Hurts is not,
I wouldn't respect it, right?
I would not respect it
until
you show me that you can do it. So you're diving at Saquon every single time.
So their 2 earlier matchups too were kind of marred by injury as well to both quarterbacks, which is interesting, right? So the first game, that was when Jaden Daniels was still dealing with a rib injury, and they kind of went through that funk, right? They lost 3 straight games: Pittsburgh, Philly, and Dallas, and that's when he had the rib injury. And people were really wondering, like, is that the Cliff Kingsbury, end of season, crash and, all this stuff. And when they lost those 3 in a row, but it coincided with Jaden Daniels having that pretty serious rib injury, which really affected his throwing. He wasn't hitting the deep shots and wasn't running as much. And so they lost to Philly in that one, 26-18 in Philadelphia. So that was an 8-point game in Philadelphia. And then you go to the home game against Philly in week 16. And they won 36-33, but Hurts got knocked out with a concussion earlier.
Concussion game.
And so it's like that was early too. I think it was first half. So it's tough.
That was early in the first half because I know a lot of people
and I know
killed in fantasy. They did. A lot of people got killed in fantasy football that week. I know the people that I was playing had Hurts, and I was glad. But I mean, I think he got 2 or 3 points that week.
So it's hard to handicap this game as far as from a divisional perspective and their 2 earlier matchups, because I think both teams didn't play their full arsenal in either game. So it's interesting to see now. Now you got the Eagles, with Hurts dealing with another injury. So yeah, I could see this game going, either way, back and forth. Do you have, do you think it leans one way or the other? Are you going one way or the other? I kind of want to lean Washington here, just because I think they're playing confident, good ball. But man, I just really worry about Philly's defense. Kind of really
from a betting perspective, the 6.5. I'm probably going to log in right after the show and go bet that.
Right.
I thought after the Hurts injury, the line would have moved back a little bit. It seems like it just kind of stayed there. If it was like 4.5 where it opened, was probably where I'd be like, okay, I'm probably staying away from this game, but I'll probably be wrong come Sunday at 6:30 once the Bills game starts. But the 6.5 seems like a lot. The 47.5, I'd probably move that number like 6 to 10 points and parlay it with this 7 or 7.5. Like move that number and see what I get. I lost last week the Rams-Philly game by 0.5 point after moving the number. But the 4 Philly games are really hit or miss. Like they've shown they can be 30-plus point games for both teams, or if their defense shows up, they could keep the opponent under 20 points. We've seen both of those. So I don't think either game script would surprise me. I think the injuries to Hurts and the injury to Washington's defense and them just not playing well, Bobby Wagner, I don't think he practiced all week. He'll probably play, but I think the same thing happened last week for him. That's big. I mean, like he's the center of that defense and makes all the calls, all the adjustments. So while he'll be able to do it, how effective will he be? I think that's going to be important for them. I think that kind of neutralizes with the Hurts injury. If Wagner was healthy, like I'd probably give the edge to that defense. You lock down A.J. Brown with an injured Jalen Hurts, and you kind of force him to go elsewhere, and you have your linemen and linebackers dive at Barkley and try and force them to make him a little bit one-dimensional. Washington, on the other hand, like I don't think anybody saw it. I mean, I'm sure there was some people that saw this coming out of Jaden Daniels at some point. I'm worried about Washington's wide receiving core. Like Philly's secondary is so good, and if he can't go to McLaurin and he can't go to Hurts, where is he going to go? De'Ami Brown, like Jamison Crowder, like does he go back to Zacchaeus? These aren't exactly guys that are going to win man-to-man coverage, one-on-one battles there. So a little concerned about that, and then obviously we know what the Philly D-line is. So it's really just going to come down to how effective I think Hurts can be. And if he's able to play well and do what he's been able to do, then Philly should run away with the game. But that injury just wants me to bet the Washington side. I think it's a little bit more severe than people know.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I mean, in the second game, they put up 36. He had the 5 touchdown passes, but a lot of that was like, chunk plays. He had a 49-yarder to Zacchaeus, a 32-yarder to Terry McLaurin, a 51-yarder to De'Ami Brown. He was hitting big plays. So I think that's where he also ran 9 carries for 81 yards. So it's like, can he get out of the pocket? Can he create and get those chunk plays? Because they could not run the ball. Brian Robinson had 10 carries for 24 yards. Chris Rodriguez had 3 carries for 5. Jeremy McNichols had 2 carries for 3. So I think that's the big thing. Also, that they didn't have Eckler in that game, and I think that's an added dynamic that helps them. Zach Ertz only had 1 catch for 12 yards in that game.
I would look for Washington to maybe use their running backs a lot out of the backfield in the passing game. It's not Zach Bond, but the other starter that's been next to him, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's out. He missed last week. He's going to miss this week.
It's Nakobe Dean.
Dean, that's their coverage line. I mean, that's a big loss for them. I would look for Eckler and even Robinson to get some action out of the backfield. It's a tough game. Obviously, all these are. It's also the third time they're playing each other.
Yeah.
We talked about that weeks ago. Like if the Bills ended up playing Miami in the playoffs, which didn't end up happening, but like third time you play somebody, it's hard to win once, hard to win twice.
Yeah.
It's
and they split too, so
they split. You can only show so much, and eventually they know what you're going to do. You have tendencies and all that.
Trying to look at the weather for that game real quick.
Yeah, I think it's supposed. I know down here in Florida, it's supposed to clear up a little bit. East Coast,
yeah, it's 43, so
yeah,
should be nice.
Yeah,
so I think that game's going to be a toss-up, man. I think it could come down to turnovers, who makes the mistakes in that game. I definitely think if the game's close at the end, I think the edge has got to go to Washington and Jaden Daniels, just because this year they've been able to show that they've been able to win those close games, and at the end, and especially with his mobility, I think when games get close like that gets even more heightened, right? The scrambling ability, and with Hurts' knee injury, I think that hurts. I also wonder, like, man, if Washington can get out to an early lead in that game, that could really flip the script, because if you can get Saquon out of that run heavy game script and make Hurts have to throw the ball, yeah, man, and you saw that in Detroit, right? When Detroit had to get away from the run and had to just throw the ball, that's when mistakes happen, and that's where Washington's defense was able to tee up some blitzes and get after it a little bit. So
yeah,
I think game script really is going to matter.
I think so as well. I think if Philly gets out to an early lead, like Washington could work their way back into it. Like there's a clear path to it. I don't know how confidently Philly can work their way back into it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think Washington plays way better from behind.
I mean, they've shown that they have.
Right.
They've shown that they have. They're the most aggressive team on fourth down. They had. I felt like there was a comeback win by them every single week this year. It was unreal. So, yeah, it's a really. I mean, both these games are going to be super hard to call. But if I had to pick a team, like you're taking Philly at home, but from a points perspective, like the plus 6.5 is making me want to go Washington.
For sure.
Plus, I'd love a little revenge game if the Bills and Washington get a matchup in the Super Bowl.
Be great.
A 90s revenge game.
And the Eagles are the one team that the Bills haven't played from the NFC East in the Super Bowl, which is another interesting talking point. If you want more breakdown from this game, player props, betting stuff, definitely tune in to No One to Blame Sunday morning. I think this week's edition is at, I want to say, noon. It's either 11 or noon Eastern Sunday. Just check out our social media at Do Champions, and we'll be pushing out that. Or on YouTube, we'll schedule it, and you'll be able to see it in there. But yeah, Sunday morning, we're going to go over both games. It's Kevin and Dude Neffy and myself, and we'll break down both these games, give you all the angles, player props. We'll do some daily fantasy, stuff like that. So we'll definitely get way more into it Sunday morning. All right, well, let's get into the AFC Championship game, man. So it's going to be on CBS as usual.
Romo and Nance again.
Yep, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be Jim Nance on the play-by-play, Tony Romo on the color commentator. And then they got a couple people on the sidelines for this game. I think they have 3 sideline reporters for this game. The Chiefs are favored by 1.5 right now. The over/under is 48.5. This is the 4th playoff meeting between Mahomes and Josh Allen. This is is it the 8th, 9th meeting overall between them. Sean McDermott is 5-1 against Andy Reid and the Chiefs in the regular season. He's 0-3 against the Chiefs in the postseason. Josh Allen 0-3 against Mahomes in the postseason. What is he, 4-1 against them in the regular season? So no other quarterback has beat Patrick Mahomes 4 times. So definitely some interesting storylines here. I mean, I think we'll start maybe with legacy on this one. I think this is a big legacy game. And more so for Josh Allen. I think this is his chance to say, I'm here, I can beat Mahomes and get over the hump. I mean, if you lose this game, then Allen will be 0-4 against Mahomes in the playoffs, and that narrative only grows, right? That monkey only grows on his back, and that narrative is, well, he can't do it 4 other times, so why is he going to do it now? I think that's a really big one here, is just showing that they can do it in the playoffs. They can get over the hump.
I think it's tough. I think it's tough too, because it's like, with the exception of the AFC Championship game from 2020, the COVID year, 2021, whatever it was, Josh has played. I mean, the Bills are in the games against the Chiefs. Josh plays unbelievable. And last year, the kick, you can say what you want. Like, there's also the Diggs drop. Like, he's had some guys let him down. It's unfortunate. Obviously, the 13-second game, we don't need to talk about that. But, like, Josh has played unbelievable. Like, what more can he do? Yeah, they could score more points here and there, but at a certain point, like, it can't just be him winning games on his own. Like, Mahomes has help in winning these games. It's never just him. Yeah, he makes a miraculous play all the time, but whether it's a turnover or Butker making a 60-plus yard field goal or Travis Kelce doing what Travis Kelce does, like, the Bills are going to need somebody to do that in this game. I don't know who it's going to be. Hopefully it's Shakir, like Josh trusts Shakir. Maybe Von Miller comes up and makes a play. Greg Rousseau seemed to have the Chiefs' number, so maybe he makes another statement play this year. I mean, I think it was last year where he almost stuck out his hand and almost grabbed the ball out of midair and picked it off on like a screen pass or a swing pass. And the Chiefs' offense is not what they were. But like,
yeah,
they could open a can of worms on
See,
this.
I think that's the thing for me, is I think it's someone on the defense for the Bills has to step up and make a play. That's what they've been lacking in the regular season. They've done it, right? They've had the interceptions. They had Taron Johnson had the big interception. Taylor Rapps had an interception. It's the pressures. They've gotten some pressures, and so it's who on the defense can step up for me and make the big plays that helps the offense. Because I don't think the offense has been the issue, and I don't think it's going to be the issue on Sunday night either. I think the offense is going to show up. They're going to put up their points, but can the defense do enough to stop them? And there's a massive split difference between Patrick Mahomes against the Bills in the regular season and the playoffs, and that's really been the difference. He's a way different quarterback against them in the playoffs. He's, they put up way more points and way more yards in the playoffs, and then that's been the difference in this matchup, man. And so for me, it's who on the defense can just make a play.
Do you think that the Chiefs have been like the Chiefs? I don't want to say they struggled in the win over the Texans, but like the Texans were super banged up and they kind of just leaned on their defense and rode out that game. And yeah, there were some penalties and stuff, whatever. But like, do you think that they're, quote, saving whatever they got for the Bills? Because I mean, like, the Bills had to do a lot to beat Baltimore last week, and it was a big defensive effort and controlling the clock. But like,
I just think they're two very different opponents, and so I mean, I almost think both teams played similar as far as don't make the mistakes, don't give up possessions, and let the other team make mistakes and then feast off those mistakes. And I think in this game we could see something the opposite. I think both teams know they have to score in this game. I don't think it's you can play conservative in this game. I think it's pedal to the metal. I think both offenses know they got to put up points, and who can do it better. And third downs are going to be important. Fourth downs are going to be important, and scoring touchdowns in the red zone. And so I think, has Kansas City held some stuff back? Probably, just because it's a different opponent. It's a different defense. They're going to attack the Bills' defense differently than they would have against the Texans.
So one thing the Bills have been doing significantly more this year, especially at the end of this year, and it's been talked about on all of our shows on the Do Network, is the Bills are playing an unbelievably high rate of man defense compared to what they have in the past. Yeah. Do we expect that to continue? Do they go back to the zone defense and fall kind of back on Sean McDermott where his roots really lie? Or like, I don't know how you can man up with Kelce, man up with Worthy, and then still try to key in on that Kansas City run game.
I'm not sure you're going to see the Bills put too much towards the run game. I think you're going to see them, be more worried about no explosive plays and keeping the lid on. I do think you're going to see matchup man. I definitely do. I think that's where Christian Benford, that injury and is he going to clear concussion protocol and play is so big because he gives them that ability to just kind of put him on an island and trust that he's not going to let, something over the top. But yeah, I think with Worthy on one side and then you got Marquise Brown on the other, that's a lot of speed, man. And I don't think you want to man that up and go like single high or something. But at the same time,
especially not single high with
right.
wrap out.
But you can't run zone on critical downs against the Chiefs. Especially Travis Kelce's just going to eat that up. I think you have to. Now the Bills have done some stuff where they do like they'll run a zone, but they'll kind of match it and they'll maybe bump Travis Kelce off the line of scrimmage or something, or trail him with a player, and then they'll buzz one of the safeties down to take away the hook to curl area. There's different stuff they've done, so I definitely think they're going to have a plan for him over the middle, but he's been a different player in the playoffs versus the Bills than he has in the regular season. The Bills have kind of handled Kelce more so in the regular season. In the playoffs, he's had some big games against them, so my whole focus would be on critical downs, second and long, third and long for sure. Any third down essentially
find a way to get off
is going to be make someone else beat you. Make someone else beat you. Do not let Mahomes' legs or Kelce beat you on those critical plays. I think that's the big thing. Make someone else have to step up and make a play. And I think that's where the Bills will have some kind of advantage. I do think you're going to see some interesting things with like they might do the match man type stuff where they do like 3 defensive linemen and 2 linebackers and then 6 defensive backs. Yeah, and do 6 defensive backs. And then one of the linebackers, whether that's Milano or Bernard, stays around the line of scrimmage and mirrors Mahomes, whatever he does, and, triggers if he goes one way or the other. You saw that last week against Lamar. You saw it week 11. And so I definitely think you're going to see that as well. But I for me, this whole game comes down to the Bills' defensive line. If the Bills' defensive line shows up and they play like they did against Week 11 or better, I think the Bills have a good chance to win this game. If that defensive line does not show up and they do not get pressure on Mahomes with 3 and 4
and you have
pressures,
to do with 4. You got to do with 4.
Yep. Or 3 in the match linebacker who blitzes when Mahomes moves. But yeah, if they can't get pressure with 3 or 4, it's gonna be rough, man. I don't think they're gonna be able to stop that offense now with fully loaded like they are.
Right. Yeah, and without Rashid Rice even. I want to flip over to the offensive side because this has been a thought in my head all week. Really, is this the week that Amari Cooper shows up? Like, do the Bills just lean on him? Like, have they not used him? Have they not used him because they have something for him specifically for this game, or is he just not really part of the offense right now?
I think he is. I think his whole purpose is to draw attention, and if the focus is on him, they don't go to him. When the focus isn't on him and they leave him one-on-one against a good matchup, Josh goes to him. You saw that week 11. My guest, later, is going to talk about that. Kyle from the Chiefs side. Early in that game, they didn't have Trent McDuffie on Amari Cooper, and the Bills went to him early on those 2 big throws, and Amari had 50-something yards between those 2 catches, and then they moved Trent on Amari the rest of the game, and Amari didn't have another catch, and so I think that could be something you see. They might try to eliminate him, but again, in that game, we didn't have Keon, we didn't have Kincaid, and they have Jalen Watson back on the opposite side of Trent McDuffie, and so for me, I don't care about my outside receivers. I'm attacking the middle of the field in this game. I'm using Kincaid and Knox. The Chiefs give up the most yards to tight ends and the second most receptions. I'm using Knox and Kincaid and the running backs. For sure. And I'm making linebackers have to cover and safeties and we'll see. And I think that gets to be a lot when you also have to worry about Josh and spying Josh. And I want to see who they have spy him and if they spy him. And Spags likes to blitz, so who's gonna be the hot read on some of this stuff? Is it going to be Kincaid or Shakir? I think it's going to be more inside guys and not so much outside guys, unless Spags does something different and they leave Amari or they leave Keon on a good matchup. Then I think they'll attack it. Josh was very deliberate with who he threw at in that Chiefs game. He singled in on Nazir Johnson or whatever
Yep.
from them, and then also Chamari Conner. And so he knew who he wanted to go after, and I think you're going to see that again. Whether that's a linebacker or a safety, they're going to find a good matchup and spam it. And I also think this is going to be a big run game this week. Spencer Brown didn't play in that Week 11 game, and he's a big
That's right.
piece of it. And you know, both the interviews that I have later in the show were with Jeremiah Sirles and Kyle Henning. We both talked about Spencer Brown being in there and what he adds to that run game and that power running game and the tackle wrap and pulling them and stuff. They didn't do that in Week 11. They didn't do tackle wrap. They didn't pull the tackle on the right side or anything because Spencer Brown didn't play, and that's a big piece of it. So there's just a bunch of added dynamics in this game that weren't there on both sides for both teams. I mean, Pacheco didn't play in that game earlier. Neither did Hollywood Brown. Hopkins had just got there. So there's just a lot of elements to this that I think are going to be unique or different. I wanted to go over a couple key stats for both teams that I think are going to be important in this game. So, turnover differential, Bills are number 1 in turnover differential at plus 27, 35 takeaways to 8 giveaways. Historic type season for the Bills as far as giveaways, only 8. There's not many teams in the history of the NFL who've gone a whole season of under 10, and the Bills only had 8. I think it's like the first time since like 1970. So really historic, and can they continue that, right? Possessions are at a premium, and can they continue to not turn the ball over? The Chiefs are number 11 in turnover differential at plus 6. So that's a 21 difference between the two teams. That's huge,
But
21 turnovers.
one thing I'd like to point out is a lot of those turnovers were early. They have not turned the
Right.
ball over in 8 straight games now,
Since
I think.
Week 11, since against
It's
us.
since the game against us, they
Yeah.
have not turned the ball over, and
Yep.
they've had 11 or 12 takeaways. So
Right, they're at 20
It's a
takeaways,
misleading
14
number.
giveaways for
yeah,
sure.
and we posted about that on our Twitter earlier this week. Is I think the Bills since that are 14 takeaways and 1 giveaway, and the Chiefs are 11 and none. So
Yep.
this could very simply come down to who turns the ball over.
Yeah, I think where possessions are a premium, it for sure can. All right, we'll go over third down, fourth down, and red zone. Chiefs offense is second on third down conversion. They're third and fourth down conversion and 22nd in red zone. The Bills defense is 29th in third down, 13th in fourth down, and 16th in the red zone. That red zone for me is going to be huge for the Chiefs. Can they score? They've kind of struggled at it at times. Week 11, they struggled at it. You know, can the Bills hold them to field goals? I think is massive in this matchup. Obviously, when points are at a premium. The Bills' offense is 7th on third down conversions, 2nd on fourth down conversions, and 2nd in the red zone. So the Bills have been very good at scoring touchdowns, and that's got to continue this week. Chiefs' defense is 26th on third down. That is just unheard of for them. Both these teams are traditionally great at third down defense.
It's been a weird season.
And they've both been very bad. The fourth down defense, though, has been better for the Chiefs. They're 9th. And then they're 8th in red zone defense. So top 10 in red zone defense. And again, like that's going to be massive for me in this game is who could score touchdowns, not field goals. One more is we'll do DVOA for both teams. So if people aren't familiar with DVOA, it's basically just a metric that takes a ton of data. It basically takes both teams, who they've played, strength of schedule, where the games were played. It breaks down every single play and looks at the average in that same exact situation, and then did you do better or worse than the average. It's a really great metric. It's all encompassing, and I really love it, especially this late in the season. It's much more accurate than like total yards.
There's a lot of data
or
for it.
some of the other stats. Yeah, there's a ton of really good data. So DVOA wise, overall, Kansas City is 7th and Buffalo is 2nd. So no surprise there, right? Both teams comfortably in the top 10, but Buffalo 2nd overall in DVOA, Kansas City 7th. Offensively, Kansas City is 5th in DVOA. Buffalo is 2nd. Pass DVOA, Kansas City is 11th. Rush DVOA, Kansas City is 12th. The Bills are 2nd in pass DVOA and 4th in rush DVOA. So both very good offenses, both in the top 10, top 15, but the Bills are top 4 in every category. The Bills' offense has been extremely efficient, extremely good. Defenses, the Chiefs' defense is 12th in DVOA, 7th in, 17th in pass DVOA, 9th in rush DVOA. Now these rankings include the playoffs, but don't include Week 18. So that's what's cool about DVOA too, is they pulled out the Week 18 games because both these teams didn't really play any starters in that game. The Chiefs definitely didn't. So it does not include Week 18 data. The Bills' defense is 7th in DVOA, 14th in pass DVOA, 8th in rush DVOA, and then special teams. The Chiefs have a big advantage. They're 12th. The Bills are 28th. Bucker's back and healthier. He's been kicking the ball better. Matt Ariza has been punting the ball well. We know him. And then their coverage and return units are really good. Remigio, I think is that how you say his name? He's their returner with Mecole Hardman out. And then for the Bills, I'm guessing it's probably going to be Shakir again on punt return, and then Ray Davis and Ty Johnson on kick return.
I wouldn't be surprised if Codrington's active just because Rapp is out, so you get an extra defensive back.
Well, we'll see. It's an interesting one. I'm not sure. Are they going to do an offensive lineman? Are they going to do a defensive lineman? Are they going to do a cornerback or something, or a safety? I don't know. That's a really interesting one. I'm not sure you want to bring a guy in who hasn't played in a couple weeks and have him return punts in a big game like this. I think you just trust with Shakir. He's been doing a really good job, especially in a massive game like this, right? So it's an interesting one. Definitely check social media the day of the game, and we'll give you the who's active and inactive and stuff like that. But yeah, that's definitely one to watch. Anything else you got before we will bring on our first guest, or I should say I'll play the first recording. I pre-recorded with both our guests for tonight, so I'll play both of those for you guys here in a minute. But do you have anything else talking point wise before we dive into that?
No, I'm going to let you dive into that, and I'll jump back on. I'll be listening, and I'll jump back on for closing.
Should we do the Chiefs side first, or do you want to do the Bills side first?
Let's see what they want to hear. Guys, feel free to drop some comments in the chat. We'll give it a minute or two. If you don't have any preference, we'll give it a go. The Sirles.
We got Lamont Fuller saying perfect script for the Bills is getting an insanely bad pass interference call in their favor, and the Chiefs get a taste of their own medicine. Yeah, I definitely talk refs with Kyle about this and the Chiefs' perspective on it. We didn't want to talk too much about the refs, but it's hard not to in a big game like this, especially with
it was interesting
a lot of the narratives.
It was interesting the crew they assigned to this game.
Yeah, Clete Blakeman. I covered a little bit on one of the interviews, the one with Kyle. Mahomes is 6-5 against him. His second worst record.
5-6.
6-5. It's 6-5.
I saw 5.
Because his worst record is with Brad Allen at 4-4. So
okay. I mean, either way, the Chiefs do not lose a lot of games. They've lost 5 with this crew.
Most crews they have 0 losses.
Right.
So it is a big deal. Again, in the playoffs, it's a mixed crew, so it's not his normal crew.
No.
But we do a breakdown of the ref report. So check Do Champions on Twitter and Instagram, and we put out a ref report every week with the referee and their crew, and then their tendencies and how they call games. It looks like in this game, Clete Blakeman's crews like to call more penalties in a lot of situations overall. So that's something to watch. Typically in the playoffs, they have a tighter whistle and they call less. So we'll see how that plays out. I think everyone would prefer the less calls and the refs staying out of the way. But again, when something really affects the play, you got to make the call. So let's just hope there's no controversy here. The refs make the right calls. So.
I think this is a good lead in right into the interview with Kyle, since we're talking Bills Chiefs.
Okay.
And I think, guys, you'll want to hang around for the Sirles interview. It's pretty great and it's not super long.
All right. Well, so I'll bring Kyle Henning on. So he is Kingdom Says podcast. So I'll bring him on, and then after that, I'll come back on, talk a little bit, and then we'll play the Jeremiah Sirles interview as well, and then we'll close it out with score predictions and stuff like that. So feel free to comment during the video. I'll answer back in chat. I just won't talk over the interview. So, and then Don will catch you later, man.
Cowboys have hired Brian Schottenheimer.
Yeah, no surprise.
Just saw
there.
that. Yeah.
They're a mess.
So that
All right.
likely means Brady's staying in Buffalo, man.
Yeah, the only opening, what is Saints left?
Saints, which is we'll talk about it later, but that's good news.
All right, here's the interview with Kyle. All right, and now I'm joined by Kyle Henning of the Kingdom Says podcast. Kyle, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to a good Sunday of football with the matinee of whatever is happening in that is the little opener, and then the big ticket item on Sunday night. So,
yeah, I'd like to say that this is my favorite week. I think it's the most competitive week of football. You usually get two really good games, so I'm hoping we see that, and then hopefully the NFC kicks it off right before our game.
yeah, the divisional round is the one I usually have the most fun with because there's 4 and you usually get a full weekend of really good football. Although
Right.
not every game in the divisional round was super great this year. So
Right.
looking
That's my
forward to
only
this
knock
one.
with the divisional, right? I love the Saturday to Monday, but the only issue is like you don't always get like very good football.
Yeah.
So.
Monday was a little less enjoyable for me. I had to watch them lose. I had to watch my guys lose that game after fighting back in it, but it was fine.
Yeah.
Notre Dame fan, so it is what it is with that. But
Buckeye here. So sorry,
Yeah.
sorry man. Sorry.
it's all right. They did a lot more than I expected them to this year with the amount of
1000%.
injuries we had. We had
Well,
like
the future's
14
bright, too, with
guys.
that squad. I mean, it's not.
and everybody's panicking about the transfer portal. I'm like, do you guys realize that? I know you guys know those names because they were in the national title game, but none of those were supposed to start this year. Like
Yeah.
nobody that's leaving was supposed to be a starter. So it is what it is. I'm happy. I'm obviously happy Brian Kelly's not the coach anymore, so that's a plus.
Dude, unbelievable. Yeah, Freeman's what a stud, man, and it's the program's only going to go up, man. I really believe that.
That's
He's
the
in a
hope.
really good spot. So I do hope that Al Golden though doesn't do anything at the Bengals though. I hope he stays.
Me as well. I
Yeah,
would personally enjoy that not going well.
yeah, me too. All right. Well, let's dive into our game here. We'll start with injuries. We talked about it briefly. There's not much, man, on the Chiefs side. Looks like everyone's going to be healthy. Is there anything you're worried about with anyone dinged up or anything concerning?
The only two that are kind of a thing, I didn't realize Caliendo was on the injury report at all. I know he's a full participant, but I didn't realize he was on there at all.
With an ankle, right?
He's got a shoulder.
Okay.
And then obviously Jalen Watson played about 60% of the snaps last week. He is coming off of a broken fibula at the ankle bone and had to have the tightrope surgery for a high ankle sprain. So that one was a little bit of a what's going to happen last week. I honestly, as long as everything is still on track from last week, I expect him to be basically every snap this week, and that's a huge, huge deal for this defense. So other than those two things, I know Patrick's still listed because he's still getting treatment, and so is Jawan, but I don't have any glaring overarching concerns. Patrick, his ankle is made of bubble gum and rubber bands at this point. It just flexes and folds, and stuff that would sit most guys out for a month, he's able to walk through, partially because of what him and his trainer do in the off season. So
And then for the Jalen Watson piece, he looked really good last week, right?
I thought so. He seemed to not think so, according to his tweet that he put out, but I thought he looked fairly good.
Okay.
He only gave up one completion. He was targeted. They only targeted him twice, which bit odd for a guy who's been out for 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks,
Right.
12 weeks, whatever it is, and they only threw it his way twice. But
Did he
that
line
kind of
up
tells you.
Did he line up against Nico or what?
No, that was
whoever
mostly
on his side?
that was mostly Trent's
Okay.
deal was Nico. Trent's so different.
so good,
He's the number one PBU guy in Chiefs history now, and he's played for like 2 1/3 postseasons.
Which
it's
is insane
crazy.
that he didn't have his interceptions until this year, and it was back to back, right?
It was back-to-back weeks. Jameis gave him his first one, and then after that, he got another one. It's more of a just kind of a ball luck thing with
Yeah.
that. I mean, he's never, and the other part is he's in such good position most of the time that they don't throw it at him very often.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's hard to get picks when they're not putting
Especially
the ball
this
in
year,
harm's way.
Teams know who he is now, you know.
Yeah, well, you would think, but then somehow he still doesn't make all pros, and other guys on other teams do that I didn't think had as good a year. So it is what it
Yeah,
is.
We know all about that. We know all
It's all right.
about
This
that.
team's not after individual awards at this point, so
Right, exactly. Exactly. All right, well, so that's the injury report. How about we get into a couple storylines for the game? Um, we'll start out with the least favorite topic of everybody's mind, the refs. So the ref for this one, the lead one is Cleet Blakeman. It's obviously a mixed crew, but as head ref, Mahomes is 6-5 with Cleet Blakeman. His second worst record with any ref. His worst record is with Brad Allen at 4-4. Do you have anything to say about that, or him, or the refs?
the ref conversation has gone so far off of the deep end on most social platforms. For me, it's something that I've been discussing, talking about on social media for the better part of or more of than a decade. Is there's an officiating problem. It's just it's all of the officials. It's not, and it's not one team or the other team or this. It's they're just not very good at what they do. And a lot of it for me starts with there's a really simple solution for this from the NFL's perspective. They just won't do it.
Yeah, well, they
If they
have
were
the capability, right? They have it.
well,
They just don't use it.
not even the replay portion of it, not even the replay assist. They're not full-time employees. This isn't their main job. Most of them are tech analysts or injury lawyers or real estate agents. If the guys in charge of operating the game are not held to the same standards and the same amount of work requirement that the people playing in the game or working the front offices for the games for these teams or anything else, the product isn't going to be as good. The other part is these athletes are bigger, faster, stronger, and the game moves at a speed that is just absolutely broken as far as how fast it is compared to even what it was 20 years ago. And we also watch most of these games now on TV broadcasts in slow motion. So officiating a game in slow motion looks easy. Officiating in a game when everybody that gets in
Especially
a
with
collision
10 different angles, right? Too.
and the thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is if you go to a game and you're down by the field, you realize just how fast everything happens. Like there's a reason that they talk about these guys, every single one of these hits is like a car accident. It's because it is. They're 200 to 300 plus pound men flying around. Like you have offensive linemen running in the fives now as far as 40 time goes. That's not normal. Those are aliens just in human bodies. So it's a tough job. They could also do a lot better job. But the main thing is the Chiefs play in primetime so often and are on standalone games so often that you get more views of the calls. And of course, everything is under a microscope. And you go from that. It's the same stuff we saw with Brady and the Patriots, even though they were actually like actively cheating in several aspects, at least that the Patriots teams were. So the vitriol is different
the
for
regular
me.
season versus the playoffs too, though, has been a difference as far as regular season. I think the Chiefs are like bottom 5 and benefiting from playoff yards. I think they actually get called for more penalties than their opponent by like quite a lot. The difference I think for a lot of people is playoffs. One of the guys who covers the Bills, a local reporter, Mike Catalan, here's his tweet he put out. He broke down the last 3 years of the playoffs for the Chiefs. So for the Chiefs, they've been called for 36 penalties, 319 yards. This is in 11 games. Opponents, 66 penalties for 541 yards. So 30 penalty difference. That's a huge disparity.
Yep.
But it's hard to just boil that down and be like, oh, well, the refs are just calling way more, for the Chiefs essentially. But there's a lot of reasons for that. Like, coaching goes into that, styles of play, game scripts. So it's hard to just boil it down and say, oh, well, the Chiefs are definitely benefiting way more than, other teams. And in the Super Bowl against San Francisco, the Chiefs actually got called for more than, or the same amount of penalties as the 49ers.
Yep. And so the other part of that stat that Mike put out there, and if there's a lengthy, I mean, the guy's whole timeline at this point is this because he's been fighting this fight for like 4 days now. But Josh Dubow over at the Associated Press, and that's Josh DUBOWAP is his social media handle. A good chunk of the penalty disparity is in procedural penalties, whether it's offsides, delay games, false starts, not subjective stuff, objective. This happened or it didn't penalties. And a lot of that, like you said, there's factors. Arrowhead, because most of those 11 games are at home.
That's a great point.
If you've
Yep.
never been in that building, it's a different
Yep.
level of loud.
Yep.
And to the point where refs' voices crack, and John Elway's begging the refs to make it quieter, and like it's been going on a long time. It's a different environment. Also, it gets a little tighter when you're there. The nerves get a little more, so guys are a little jumpier. If you go to actual like subjective calls, they're pretty much even when it comes to the PIs and the holdings. And my favorite playoff narrative penalty from the Catalan tweet was, well, they hold so much during the regular season. Why don't they hold in the playoffs? Because nobody gets called for holding in the playoffs. They
Yep.
pretty much stop calling it. The way the
Yep.
game is officiated the first 18 weeks out of the year versus the way it is in the postseason is done very differently by the refs. Whether it's because the superstar crews that they start to use throughout different games, whether it's an emphasis by the league to tell them basically, hey, let the players decide the games unless
Yep.
it's right there, egregious, and really changes a game. There's a lot of factors, but there's no grand conspiracy that would make no logical functional sense, because you'd have to have, I don't know, 3,000 people all on the same page, all agree to it, all be okay with it, and all be on the same page with it to avoid federal prosecution for rigging. Like, none of that argument makes sense. The bigger problem is the refs are just a problem. And the fastest way the NFL can solve that is by making them full-time employees, making them put in the same amount of 40, 60 hours a week that these players and these coaches and these front office staffs that they do. That way, they all work together. They run simulated games together. They study tape together. If they did that, they would fix a lot of these issues. And also,
I think also hold them accountable too, right? Like they don't really do that.
no.
That's
The
there's no
one reporter
penalties.
in the pool report after every game does nothing because they don't get held to any kind of account. They're never forced to answer any questions. And then when they are supposedly punished by the league, most of the time we never hear anything about it ever. And so it's just a very frustrating thing for all the fan bases. It is very odd as a Chiefs fan to now be the target of this conversation, because for most of my life, that I couldn't have dreamed to be on the target end of this conversation. We
Yep.
we were the team where, we were talking about it pre-show, the 2018 Brady roughing the passer penalty, where he actually didn't touch his helmet, is still one of the more insane calls I've seen. There's just a multitude, but you can go, like I said, you can go through every game, every time, and there are 4 to 10 controversial calls throughout games that, if you really boiled it down, for example, your guys' game directly after us, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how the PI was PI on the defense. I thought it was going to be a no call, nobody,
Mhm.
no flag. If
Yeah.
anything, it was probably offensive pass interference more than it was defensive. I know they're hand fighting, but then there's a clear push off and a clear push down, but they call it on the defense, not the offense. Then that turns into a touchdown. Like, there's those kind of things every single game. It's just more
Well, I
amplified
think
at
part
the
of
end
it
of the
too,
day.
though, is the Chiefs play so many one-score games and close games that those plays then are more remembered, right?
Sure.
When you're winning by 2 scores or double digits, a lot of times you forget the calls you get or the bad calls. But
Well,
when it's a one-score game, you remember the pivotal calls or whatever. They
yeah.
become more pivotal, right? So I think that's
Which,
part of it.
that one would make a lot more sense to me. This Houston game was a double-digit game that was even made closer by the part where we gave them points at the end, and we're
Yeah.
talking about a call from the first quarter, essentially,
Yeah.
and
The
a
problem is
call.
the narrative's already set, though, right?
Oh yeah,
So people are just looking for anything
of course.
to validate it.
And it's like I said, it's, for me, it's mostly, if they wanted to fix it, they could, but until they spend the money, and that's a lot of the part of it, is they don't want to pay for these guys to have pensions and health care and
right,
benefits.
right.
They want to keep them high-paid part-time employees that don't cost as much as if they were full-time.
Yep. No, I agree. Enough about the refs. Let's move on to the actual game.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on a couple talking points, I guess, from the Week 11 game to now, like what's changed, what happened in that game that was interesting. So for me, I thought interesting part of that game was we went a little more run heavy than we normally do. We've almost trended a little more run more than pass. But in that game, we passed more than we ran. 40 attempts for Josh and 29 design runs. There was 31, but 2 of them were kneel downs. So that leans pretty heavy to pass heavy offense. Now, part of that is our right tackle, Spencer Brown, was out that game. He's a really big piece of the run game. We've been going a lot of 6-0 linemen and bringing him Alec Anderson in to run a lot of heavy packages. They didn't really do that in that game. They only did it 8 times. And so that's another interesting element. A lot of that I think has to do with Spencer Brown not being in there, and they like to pull him a lot. So that's an interesting piece or dynamic that's different. And then the other one was all 3 times the Chiefs scored a touchdown in that game, the Bills scored the following drive. So the Bills scored a touchdown, a field goal, and a touchdown after all 3 of the Kansas City touchdowns. I think that was massive in that game, going score for score, at least points for points. And that's a narrative where I don't know necessarily that's going to happen this game. The other one is Mahomes threw 2 interceptions. Granted, one was at the very end, but he threw 2 interceptions. You don't see that too often, especially in the playoffs. So that's another piece that happened in that game that I wanted people to remember and not forget about. And the first interception was on the first drive. So immediately it was a loss of possession. Right, and it really didn't set the tone. The Bills get the ball and immediately go down the field and score. So just for people that forgot about that game, I kind of wanted to set the tone that there were some interesting things that happened in that game that aren't, very repeatable things. From the Chiefs side, do you want to talk about some of the guys you were missing and some things that have changed from week 11 till now?
Yeah, definitely. You were talking about the run versus pass heavy approach, and I think a large portion of that also had to do not only with Spencer Brown being out, which definitely is a factor, but also us having, this is going to sound probably bad for some of my Chiefs players, but basically one corner on the field at that point. They had recently lost Jalen Watson, who I talked about in the open. They were still trying to figure out who and how they were going to go about replacing him as the corner 2. They've tried Josh Williams throughout the year at points. That game was the Nazi Johnson game, and I'm fairly certain the game plan from Buffalo for Josh was, if I see 13 on someone, I'm throwing it at 13.
Yep.
And it worked out in a lot of instances. He's a converted safety. He's a late round draft pick. He's coming back from major injuries the last 2 seasons, so he was still trying to get his feet underneath him still after, again, missing part of camp from another injury. So there was a lot of moving pieces with the secondary at that point, which led to some beneficial things for Khalil Shakir, because after the 2 deep balls or deep-ish balls to Amari Cooper, they stuck Trent on Amari and said there's going to be no more Amari Cooper, and there wasn't. The problem was Khalil Shakir, and Matt Collins turned the other 2 corners, and Shamari Connor, who's the safety they try to use as a corner sometimes at that point, inside out, because they just couldn't deal with it. That will be a very different game plan from that perspective in the secondary. You mentioned the Bills going to the six lineman set. I actually think that may be more of a problem for you guys this week if you try to throw out of it, because if you go to 6, we will go to base, and then the 2 corners on the field are McDuffie and Watson. There will be no Nazi, there will be no Josh Williams, there will be no of the extra guys. It'll be a more traditional style defense. So that may be a difference in the 40 versus the 29 pass plays, run plays. The other thing I think will make a big difference on the defense is there was no Charles Omenihu in that game. He was still out, still coming back from his ACL that he tore in this game last year. In the AFC Championship game he tore last year. He made it a point today. It's been 363 days. He's very aware. He's very dead set on making a difference. He had a strip sack last game. They recovered it, but he did actually get a strip sack last game. So that's a big key, because he provides another guy. It's that addition to subtraction, the rest of the depth chart kind of thing. Same with Watson. It pushes everybody down a rung when you add him back in, and then maybe Karlaftis isn't getting double teamed, or Mike Dana's not getting double teamed, whereas they're always going to pretty much double Chris Jones. That's just how it works. But with Charles there, it gives you another guy that can win one-on-one, so it puts more pressure on that O-line. and then that frees up for what we saw with like George Karlaftis with 3 sacks. The offensive side of the key points for this game for the Chiefs from that Week 11 matchup, they have their receiving core back for the most part. Obviously, Rashee Rice unfortunately won't make it back this year. He had the massive knee injury in the Chargers game early this season. But we lost Hollywood Brown the first snap of the preseason. Like, he was immediately out. And then when Rashee went down, it became a collection of we'll have to put it and force it together and make it work. It's why you saw Noah Gray a lot in this first Bills matchup. He had, I think, 2 touchdowns in that game. I don't know that you'll see the same kind of production out of Noah, but that's largely because they now have, and I know D-Hop played in that game, but he'd been in Kansas City for like 8 minutes by the time that game was ready to go. I think he'd been in town for like a week when we played. So he's a lot more tuned into the offense. I know people will look at last week and go, well, he didn't have any catches and he played 16 snaps against the Texans. I think that was more by design than anything else. He's an older guy. They weren't really worried about challenging Lassiter and Stingley when they knew they could try to attack the middle of the field. And if you're not going to cover Travis Kelce, that's going to kill you. But D-Hop being back, Hollywood Brown being back and as part of this offense, he gives you a guy that can win in man immediately. He can win quickly in man coverage. He's a great route runner. He also has a ridiculous amount of connection with Patrick, even though they've only played like 5 or 6 actual games together. They work together all off season and in camp. So there's a connection there and an understanding, and it just adds depth. And it's going to challenge this Buffalo secondary, especially now with Taylor Rapp out.
Yeah, for sure. I think that added element of Hollywood Brown on the outside and Worthy is something to watch because the Bills will definitely just say, no, you're not going to throw deep, right? We're going to keep 2 guys back, and you're not going to throw deep. Well, that's great, but then that leaves, like you said, the middle open. You're more hesitant to drop a safety down into the middle to help against Travis Kelce, and so yeah, it definitely opens stuff up for sure. So we'll see. Definitely there. The only other piece I think from the Bills side that wasn't there on the offensive side was Kincaid didn't play and Keon Coleman didn't play either in that game. So that's 2 more pieces that didn't play in that matchup. We'll see how much that factors in.
Curious, do you think they roll less extra linemen and more 2 tight ends now that with Kincaid and Knox both being available and with Keon being a bigger wide receiver option?
I don't know. We'll see. See, the issue is they haven't, when they've done a lot of 2 tight end stuff, it's actually been Mac Hollins playing tight end instead of Kincaid because as an inline blocker, he's just a lot better, and then he can still catch and do stuff. So that's interesting. And then sometimes they'll have Kincaid and Mac Hollins inline. So I don't know. I think that's definitely a good question. We'll have to see. I'm sure there'll be some wrinkles. I know they're going to put Keon outside as well as Cooper and say, okay, if you're going to put Trent on, Cooper and take him away, that's great. Then we'll put Keon on their side and we'll try to go to him. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll put Cooper on one side and then they'll put 4 targets on the other side. And they'll make the defense decide. You just go 1-on-1 against Cooper, like, okay. Like,
wonder where Sean McDermott learned that from.
Right, exactly. So there's a lot of games there with that, and so we'll have to see. But I definitely am interested to see do the Bills go heavy? Do they go big? I think they will. I think they're going to try to bully the Chiefs here. I think they really will. I think they feel like there's an advantage to the run game. I think the right side especially. I feel like they can. They'll probably run away from Chris Jones' side, and wherever he moves around. I do think that'll definitely be part of the game plan, right? I do think they'll at least test that out. So, and we'll see if it works, right? So, the Chiefs were very good against the run for most of the season. It's let up a little the last couple games, but, we know Spags, right? If he wants to stop something, he will. So, I think that's part of the cat and mouse, right? Do the Chiefs really go to base, or do they try to stop the run? Okay, well, the Bills are happy to throw out a base and not target their wide receivers. They'll target their running backs and tight ends, and they're more than happy to do that. We saw that against Detroit. We saw that against Jacksonville. We saw that against Indianapolis. Like, if teams want to man up and go big bodies, perfect. The Bills are happy with that. So it's just part of that cat and mouse, right? Like, how do they want to play that, and who do they want to target? And you brought up a good point, I think, with as far as the Bills soloed out, what they thought was the weakest link on the Chiefs defense, and that's what they're going to do. Under Brady, that is what they do. They try to find a weakness, and they will just spam it and attack it. So what is that going to be this matchup? Is it going to be a linebacker covering a tight end? Is it going to be a safety covering a tight end? Is it going to be running backs? We'll see, but that's kind of what makes this offense for the Bills interesting this year. Is there is no style, there's no feed it to Diggs, you have to, or Gabe Davis deep, right? Like it's so multiple this year, and every time a guy is different. Like they featured Curtis Samuel, they featured Shakir, the Kincaid might have a game. Like Matt Collins had a game. Ty Johnson's gone over 100 yards receiving. Like it's going to be, where do they feel like that matchup is, and how can they attack it? It's just what's really weird about this Bills team this year.
That'll be the fun part for me, I think, because there isn't anybody better, in my opinion, as far as the defensive side of the ball goes, at making adjustments on the fly and in games.
For sure.
Spags has made an absolute living and a career
Bills
off
fans,
of it.
Bills fans, no. I mean, no. Spags is all the respect in the world. I think he's the best defensive coordinator in football. He's awesome. Him and Lou Anarumo, I think, is up there too. As far as,
Still can't believe they fired that dude.
I cannot believe either, man. To blame him for that, they took all those players, man. It's it's hard to blame him, but yeah, just those two guys, game planning and adjustments, just awesome. And so I'm interested to see what Spags pulls out. And he's going to want to blitz and have some exotic looks. And what are those going to look like? Some wrinkles. It's going to be awesome.
That was something else missing in the first matchup, and I think a lot of it was because he was still trying to figure out what pieces he actually had at that point with all the injuries and the guys missing. He was not nearly as exotic, diabolical, whatever you want to call it. If you go back and you watch that Houston game that just happened, some of the stuff he was doing to CJ Stroud is borderline cruel, as far as the way that they were running some pressures and how they were attacking things. It's really hard when he gets in his bag, even for the best of the best that have done it. I mean, he's made Brady look confused at points in time. He's attacked some of the best mental quarterbacks that you can find, and as no slight against Josh, it's just very hard when Spags goes to do that, and I don't think we saw as much of that week 11 as you're going to in this game, because Spags is going to empty the bag this time. There won't be anything left at home.
No, I think that's going to be definitely a key thing, especially the second downs and third and longs. Spags loves to set you back. You think you have a second and medium or second and short, and he'll send something exotic and try to get a sack or a negative play to make you into third and long, right? And then he can really do whatever he wants. But Brady and Josh have been really good this year against identifying blitzes, against the blitz, having hot reads. So I think that cat and mouse too is going to be interesting, because it's like Mahomes, right? Do you want to send blitzes? Do you want to pressure him, right? Because that's when he kills you. And
don't blitz him.
That
would be my advice to every D coordinator ever: is don't blitz him.
So that's when the big plays happen. So it's kind of like, how aggressive do you want to get, because the cost benefit there, and even if you're right with your blitz call,
it sometimes doesn't
Josh
matter.
And Mahomes can make you wrong, right? They can make the guy miss, and so for sure, I'm super excited about that. That cat and mouse is going to be awesome. So, and you saw last week, right? We'll get into the trenches here. The Chiefs had 8 sacks last week, which is insane, right? That is diabolical. On the season, they were tied 18th with the Bills, 39 sacks, 19th in pass rush win rate, 21st in run stop win rate. And then Chris Jones was first in defensive tackle pass rush win rate. So normally for Chiefs fans that aren't familiar, I usually give the defensive line and the offensive line rankings. They only show the top 20 for pass rush win rate and run stop win rate. But yeah, Chris Jones first in defensive tackle pass rush win rate. And then like you mentioned with Charles Omenihu coming back, I do think that's big, because having another guy on the end opposite Karlaftis, and then letting Chris Jones do whatever, right? You can move him outside. You can reduce Karlaftis inside. There's a lot of stuff you can do that you don't have to put him on the outside on big downs, because otherwise, if you don't have Omenihu and Karlaftis out there, right, then he goes outside. Well, then that's where all your help's going to go, right? It's just stop Chris Jones, and the rest is okay. And if Karlaftis is on all the way on the other side, then it's even easier to double team both sides, essentially, right, or provide help. and then you're not so worried about the middle. So I think that cat and mouse is going to be really interesting. The Bills' offensive line has been really good though this year. They have been sacked least in the NFL at 14th. Josh Allen has. In the playoffs though, they're tied 8th. Josh has been sacked 3 times, twice by Denver and once by the Ravens. The offensive line is 4th in pass block win rate, 17th in run block win rate. Both their tackles are 8th and 15th in pass block win rate, and then their center is 14th in pass block win rate. So they've been really good, especially in one-on-ones. Really good. And I think you're right. I think the simulated pressures, the exotic stuff is going to be the key. I don't think they're going to win a lot of one-on-ones just straight up rushing 4. So we'll see.
So Chris Jones also on top of leading in win rate from a D tackle perspective, he's also like number 1 with a bullet for double team rate in those wins.
Yeah,
He's
insane.
as a matter of fact, I don't remember. I think it was ESPN put up the stat from the last few years, like the last 3 or 4 years, where he's been double teamed 119 times more than the next closest guy, and that guy was Aaron Donald. And it's insane what Chris does. And people ask all the time why. Well, he didn't put up the numbers. You wouldn't either when 4 guys are blocking you all at the same time. Like it's a lot different when you're the sole focus of every matchup when it comes to this trenches matchup. And Omenihu is a huge piece. I do think it's going to be a lot harder for them to win one-on-ones. That said, Charles Omenihu can win one-on-one. He may not win every snap, but I think the thing that's going to be the most interesting when it comes to the wins and whatnot is how they try to pressure Josh, because with Josh, you have to be very careful. You cannot have compromises in your rush lanes. Yep. If you do, he will kill you. And the options there are don't really go full bore and try to just win and make sure you stay in your rush lanes, or get a little hectic and then hope you've got help behind you. So I'll be interested to see if they spy, how often they spy, and who they spy with, because I know who I would prefer them to do it with. I don't know if they will.
Last time?
Yeah, and 11? That's not an ideal. Okay. Josh is just too big for Drew, in my opinion.
Could you see like Jaden Hicks doing that?
That's who I want them to use.
Okay.
Jaden Hicks
I loved him coming out, man. He was
that was a steal and a half in the draft. I don't know how he got passed on 4 or 5 times by everybody, but he did.
Him and Brian Cook, I wanted both those guys.
So Jaden is the guy that for me I would like to see them bring him down as the safety in the box, third safety on the field, even if maybe it's not base technically, but it kind of is because he's about the same size as a couple of their linebackers. He's 6'2", 225, 230 probably. He's just plays safety and not backer because he's a freak. He's a guy that loves the physical, loves to hit, not afraid to put the shoulder in and get after it. And he's got the athletic profile to run around with Josh. The question is the discipline too. And I know Spags gets a little apprehensive when it comes to young guys, but I think he got 75% of the snaps last week, as far as the safety position is concerned. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he saw a similar number and was asked to do some of that this week. He would also, that way he can also help out with the backs out of the backfield if Josh isn't going anywhere and he needs to either help cover that middle a little bit or kick out to a flat in that instance if they try to angle Josh and force Josh to roll out or bust out one way or the other. So it'll be a directional game. The trenches battle is going to be a war on both sides. I don't know that either side has a terribly great advantage from a defensive perspective, just from the styles make fights kind of stuff. But it'll be interesting to see what the plans are for both defenses and how they try to attack. Because there's some things that can be done. It's just not going to work every time, and it's about the times that it doesn't work, what happens to you. So,
no, I think that's a great point. Yeah, Hicks reminds me a lot of like a poor man's Kyle Hamilton, and I don't mean that as like a knock on Hicks or a slight on Kyle Hamilton.
No,
I just feel like he has a lot of the same characteristics, right? Huge guy, freak athlete, can kind of do a lot of different things. So yeah, and we just saw Kyle Hamilton.
Kyle Hamilton's a dog.
He
I
is, dude. He's a
I watched
monster.
all
Oh,
of his tape. I told
so
us at the
good.
beginning of the broadcast, Notre Dame fan. I watched every snap of Kyle Hamilton in college.
Yeah.
I missed that dude from being at Notre Dame. I felt terrible for him when he got hurt both times. Yeah, it's that guy's an animal.
He is. He's a freak, man. Yeah, I think you bring up a great point, though. I think this is a trenches game. As much as we want to talk Josh and Mahomes and the freaky stuff they do, like, yes, I'm sure they're going to do that, both those guys, but it's whichever side, whichever lines can dominate this game. I think is which way this game's going to lean. You saw it week 11, right? I think the Bills had the upper hand in the trenches there, and you saw previously in the playoffs the Chiefs definitely had the advantage against the Bills in previous matchups. So I'll be interested to see how this goes and who can win that advantage. I think the Bills want to win it on the ground and want to bully ball a little bit, and they'll see if they can do it. Who knows if they can? And I think the Chiefs want to do something similar. I think they want to be efficient running the ball, right? Efficient. I wouldn't say explosive. I'll say efficient.
They can't be explosive. They don't have
right,
an explosive running back.
Right. Right, and so I think
They just
they
don't.
want to be efficient, and then I think they want to pass protect good enough. They want to protect good enough. Do you think Tooney's playing left tackle, or do you think DJ is playing left tackle?
I can tell you what I would prefer, and then I will tell you what I think they're going to
Okay.
do. I would prefer DJ to play left tackle and Tooney to play left guard for two reasons. One, it gives you their run game is not great anyway,
Yeah.
even with that lineup. And it really drops off when you've got Tooney out at tackle and Caliendo in at guard. We saw that be a little bit of an issue at the beginning of the Houston game. I'll pair that with Pacheco having a little bit of still some issues. He's still coming off of, I mean, he broke his ankle this year too. He also has some banged up ribs. He's still coming back. So, but I think they're going to leave it with Tooney and Caliendo as the combo. I hope I'm wrong, because I do think DJ Humphries, basically my thing is the gap between Tooney to Caliendo and the gap from DJ to Tooney is not as far as if you would just sit them where they're
You're
supposed
talking
to.
like Tooney's generational
Hall of Fame talent.
left guard. Like, he's the number one rated in pass block win rate for guards. Like,
Yeah.
he's legit phenomenal, right? So yeah, anyone next, besides him is going to be a big drop off, right?
And
left
then
tackle, he's good to serviceable, right? He's a quality starter level, right? Which is amazing considering he's able to do that. But yeah, like you said, is DJ Humphries that far below him? Is he still maybe a serviceable left tackle?
No, he's not. But the thing that it's comfortability for the quarterback, and I think at the end of the day, 15 is the one who decided that officially of overall
Makes
last
sense.
week. The thing with Tooney
your
is
blindside too. I mean,
the thing with Tooney is he's great technically. He's great. His feet will always be right. His hands will always be right. The problem is at tackle he can get pushed.
Yep.
He
that's
can
an
get pushed
interesting
backwards.
matchup. The Bills have two guys who they like to line up over the left tackle who are long-armed, which Tooney is short-armed, and they like to bull rush.
Yep.
And Greg Rousseau and AJ Epinesa. So that'll be an interesting matchup. I know Andy Reid's thinking that, like, if that is his weakness, do you want him going against two guys? Because Vaughn will line up on the other side. Vaughn's going to go against
Juwan Taylor and Von Miller are going to see each other the entire time Von Miller is on the field.
We saw that the last two matchups. They're definitely
Which
gonna be...
I wish Vaughn the best. I know everybody's like, oh, Juwan's not great. He does just fine against Max Crosby.
fine.
He does just fine against Daniil Hunter. Didn't have a great time. He stopped Daniil Hunter's little Euro step move that I don't think I've ever seen anybody stop when he makes that move, and he stopped it twice last week. He may drive people crazy, and he may take a penalty here or there. He's been very good.
The left side is
largely.
definitely where the Bills are going to attack. I think with Ed Oliver and then whoever's on the end there.
Like I said, I hope that they kick Tooney back to guard. I doubt they do it. I assume it will be. And if that's the case, they're going to have to make sure Caliendo's going to have to play probably his best game, which he's been pretty good the last couple of weeks. He's been better than I thought he was going to be. I'll be very honest about that. But the difference here is I think they've established who their running back one is, and I don't think it's Isaiah Pacheco at this point.
Yeah.
Whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's both, I think this game is going to involve a lot of Kareem Hunt, and you mentioned it. They don't really necessarily care about explosive. They care about effective, and he was the most effective runner of the football basically all year from the time that they got him on. His success rate running the ball, he basically never gets negative yardage ever. If he's going to get half a yard on what the play is, he's going to get a yard and a half because he always falls forward. He's one of those backs. He's got better vision. He's got better feel right now. And if you're not going to get spectacular blind blocking or run blocking, you need a guy that's got that because Pacheco, a lot of his is determinant on how good the blocking is in front of him. And it's just simply not as good when Tooney's at tackle than it is when he's at guard. And that's fine. And so I think that will determine a lot of what they do. I think I would probably run behind the right side more often than they have. I think there were some things that they were still, I know it's going to sound ridiculous, but I think they were still testing some things in that divisional round game. And it sounds crazy or spoiled or whatever, but it's what they do. It's part of the way they spend all year building and working and testing and building and working and testing. And then when you get to now's when they turn everything loose. And you saw in the latter half of that Texans game, and I'm sure you'll see it to start this one. They're not keeping anything in the bag. They're not working on anything at this point. They're running what they want to run. They're going to attack how they want to attack, and they're going to go from there because they don't really have a lot to. You guys can look at the AFC West. Not always a whole lot of threats. Usually it's one team. Now, we did have 3 teams out of the AFC West make the playoffs this year, but usually it's either the Chargers or the Broncos the last several years. So you're not really too terribly concerned there. So they do some different stuff. They try out a bunch of different things. I hope that they've got some stuff dialed in now because, again, they were still trying to see where Pacheco was at, I think, to start that game. And then when they figured out that's not really working, here, Kareem, take it. It turned into the Kareem Hunt show against Houston, and I think it's going to be Kareem's show going forward.
Yeah, and we saw that week 11, right? He's effective. All right, well, is there any other interesting things you're looking for in this game?
There's not been really any storylines given by players or anything, which has been a refreshing deal. Nobody's really decided to step out and say anything crazy. A lot of media conversations, a lot of media attempts at bulletin boarding materialing for one side or the other, but I'm excited for this game, man. I think these have been the 2 best teams in the AFC all year. I think this was kind of the matchup I think both fan bases expected all year for this game. And it's going to be a fight.
For sure. I don't think it's going to be easy for either side, whoever comes out with the W. All right, so what about player props you're looking for in this game? I know we kind of talked about that before the show.
So there's a game special for both quarterbacks to throw a combined, I think it's 500 yards and 4 touchdowns between the 2 of them. I think you're going to see You're going to see some numbers. The only thing that concerns me about that one is the passing touchdowns, because I think both teams, when they get down towards that red, they may just try to pound it in the end zone. That said, the Kareem Hunt rushing total, I think, is 35.5.
That's criminally low.
Which is like, I don't know if that's what I would do. So he
60, I think, week 11, right?
Yeah, well, and he had 50 last week, and he only had 8 carries or whatever it was.
It's 35.5 right now. That's so low.
Yeah, and then they're gonna do some weird stuff. Xavier Worthy's 3.5 yards rushing seems like almost a given, because they're gonna give him at least 1 or 2 of those jet sweeps, provided he doesn't take an 8-yard loss.
They gave Mecole Hardman 1 too against the Bills in week 11. So
yep, and Mecole won't be back. He did not come off of IR. He did not clear his window, so he's done for the year. They went ahead and kept Nico Remigio on the roster.
Okay.
He's the return man now, so that's, I guess, that is technically an injury, but he's been injured, so it is what it is. That's one. Those are 2 on the rushing side of things from Kansas City's perspective. Travis Kelce has had more than 70 yards receiving in like every playoff game he ever plays, pretty much.
It's insane.
FanDuel
it's
has him
12
at
or
6.
13, isn't it? Straight or
Yeah.
going on 14 now, I think.
Yeah.
or
He
something
also
like
has
that.
the most 100-yard games by any pass catching option in NFL history, past Jerry Rice for that. He's 2 touchdowns behind Jerry Rice for all time. He's like a couple hundred yards behind. He's 203 yards, I think, behind Jerry for receiving yards in the playoffs, which
Jeez.
anytime that you are in the same conversation as Jerry Rice for receiving totals, it's not a bad thing. So his line is 67.5. Honestly, if they play too deep and don't want to get beat deep and just leave it to Matt Milano or whoever's in the middle, I don't know that that's gonna work realistically. I think you'll see Travis eat some yards. 67.5 feels a little low since, like I said, he's never not gone over 70 in like several years now. Everybody's a little apprehensive about DeAndre Hopkins. I think they're going to use him more this week. I think he sees more targets this week. His line is 23.5. That's like 2 catches for DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
So those are some of just the offensive lines. I tend to stay away from the defensive props, just because it's hard to gauge. Like, you could have told me Georgia had 3 sacks last week, and I would have told you were out of your mind. But one other random, the kicking points for Butker and honestly for Bass both being at 6.5 and 7.5. I mean, 2 or 3 field goals, 2 extra points, whatever you feel happening. Like, I think there's going to be points put up in this game. I don't know if they're all going to be touchdowns. It's something to keep an eye on with the kicking. The weather shouldn't be too crazy.
Right, I think it's like 33 or something like that.
It's going to be like, I think the last one I saw was like 27, but no wind, which that's in Kansas City, that's nearly unheard of. So no wind is not something we get around here often. It's usually at least 10 or 15 miles an hour. So I like Harrison's 7.5 probably to be like a not worth a sprinkle or to boost a parlay a little bit if you're worried about something like that, but not necessarily to go full in on. So
what about any interesting touchdowns you like? Anytime touchdown scorers for the Chiefs? Any interesting
I haven't
angles,
looked
like
at the
a long shot?
I haven't looked at the TD scoring props. That's one thing I didn't really
No Grace
check.
plus 550. He's always interesting.
See,
one.
that seems crazy.
Right. Justin Watson 1100 plus 1100.
I don't know with D Hop and with Hollywood how much Justin Watson you're going to see in this game.
That's a good point.
So that's the only one that makes me a little sketchy.
Mahomes is plus 500.
That seems like he's so Mahomes at 500 and Noah Gray at 550 are both good value in my opinion for those.
D-Hop plus 340 seems a little high.
340 is not bad for a guy that is going to be a red zone target when they get down there. Obviously, any plus money on Travis touchdowns feels like stealing. He's plus 120, but it's still plus money. Run it straight.
Yeah.
Kind of deal there. I would steer away from the Pacheco tutty. Even Xavier Worthy at plus 200 is.
I was looking at that too.
They do different weird stuff down around the goal line, whether it's those pop passes, jet sweep, little slant and go, or like little curl routes. They all kinds of options. They run.
I also
picks.
feel like the 40-yard line, 30-yard line. Look at like a busted coverage, a double move with him or something. You know, they don't try a lot, but they try a couple.
So. Well, and they haven't tried a lot this year. Mm-hmm. If you give them the chance, they will.
Right.
And
with Taylor Rapp out, like that's
Rapp out and Benford still up in the air on how exactly, because there's some question marks. We talked about this a little bit when you and I were talking before we recorded this, but it's a little bit of a question mark. So I'm a little curious to see how the secondary of the Bills matches up. Like I said, I think there's going to be points in this game because there's always seems to be points in this game. Yeah. I don't think it's gone under in the last 4 playoff matchups or 3 playoff matchups. I think every single game has been over or close, damn near close to it. So I'm expecting this to be a good game, but I do think the defenses are going to give up some at points, both sides, because I just don't know how many horses that each one has in the barn for all the stuff that the other team presents challenges with offensively. This game for me is
You
going
think
to
it's
come
going to
down.
go over 48.5?
I think you could easily see. I think you could easily see 30-27, 28-27.
See, I think whoever gets the 30 wins.
And that's very realistic. The thing for me is turnovers, which Kansas City hasn't turned the ball over in 8 straight. Like we haven't had a turnover since week 11 against you guys. I don't think. I think that was the last game we had turnovers.
And we're the least turnover team in football.
And you guys have, and Josh has turned over a new leaf this year with not putting the ball in, doing crazy. He's so much. I love watching him play.
Yeah.
He's just terrifying to watch if you're worried about what he's going to do with the ball. But this year he hasn't done that. I thought it was pretty funny. He talked about not letting the devil on his shoulder get into his head when he was going to.
The good guy won. That was funny.
I thought for sure he was laddering or throwing that ball, laddering that ball last week for sure, and he held on to it. I was like, oh, hey, bro, here we go. So no turnovers. Whichever, if it's even, you're going to get as good a game as you can get. But if one team starts turning the ball over a bunch, it's going to be hard for that team. And I know that seems no kidding, but against these two quarterbacks in this kind of a scenario, you can't make mistakes. Yeah. You can't. The margins are too small.
Do you? I know you said you were going to wait to do your score prediction until your show, since it's airing tonight as well. Are you leaning one way or the other? You said you hadn't decided yet.
It's going to be extreme. It's going to be an extremely close game. It's going to be a one possession game. For all intents and purposes, if it ends up more than one possession, it's because somebody scores a garbage one after something happens and it's outside of the one possession or whatnot. God, it's so tight. I think KC maybe squeaks it just because of the home field and because of what all of this game is going to have in it. For me, a lot of the playoffs comes down to coach, quarterback. When you're in these really tight, really narrow margin games, it's coach and quarterback. And nothing wrong with Sean McDermott, but hard. Andy Reid is a different animal. He has been. He's proven it over and over again. And we've seen Sean McDermott make some "what are you doing" decisions in some of these games before. And until he proves that he's not going to do that, I have trouble trusting him in that. Chiefs have been playing one-score games all season. They're very familiar with how to win close football games, what they need to do. Hell, they blocked 2 field goals this year. One of them to win a game against Denver, the other one to basically seal the game against the Texans last week. It's a 3-phase game. That's the other thing we didn't really talk about. Kansas City special teams is one of the best in the league because Dave Tobe is extremely good at what he does. Buffalo's had some moments, especially covering kicks.
Oh no, the Bills have been bad. They're 28th in special teams.
So if it comes down to a 3-phase, very tight, very in the margins, gray area game, I have to take Kansas City in that because I think in all 3 phases, if you add them all up, I think they'll be just a tiny bit better. And it's no slight to what Buffalo's done this year, been this year. There's been plenty of people that didn't think they would even be anywhere close to this because no Diggs, no Gabe Davis. They gave away, traded away, and moved off of some stuff. And Josh Allen has done nothing but say, just kidding, hold my beer, we're fine. And that's exactly the same narrative and conversation that happened with Kansas City when they traded Tyreek Hill. We got to listen for basically 2 seasons that he didn't know how to win without Tyreek Hill, and then all he did was go out and win. So we're familiar. We understand how that can be when you give away or trade away a weapon that everybody else thinks is the be all end all of your offense or your defense or whatever that may be, and to go out and perform. You guys, it's been a heck of a season. It's been a fun run, and I'm just excited for this game. It's the one I've been really waiting for most of the year because, like I said, this is the AFC Championship game I thought we were getting when we kicked this whole thing off back in September or whatever it was. So I'm ready for it.
The winner of this game wins the Super Bowl?
It's really hard for me to not think that. The NFC just doesn't have the same level that the AFC does. The top of the AFC is just a murderer's row gauntlet of not only good teams but great quarterbacks. And the NFC is Jalen Hurts, who's been banged up with a head coach that doesn't coach anything. He's just kind of there to play peacemaker, but he doesn't really ever make peace. He just makes people angry, including his own players. And then a rookie with Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury. And those are a large ask for a rookie. I know he hasn't blinked all year. He's been insane all year. Comebacks and the whole nine. It's a little different if they make it to the bowl. And he's going to have his hands full this week because that Eagles defense is legit. That's the only thing about the Eagles that gives me pause other than Saquon is that defense is legitimate. But I just think either team that wins this game has more than enough to overcome, because I don't think Philly can play from behind. I don't think if Philly makes the game against Buffalo or Kansas City that they can fall down 7 or 10 points and have Jalen Hurts throw them back into a game.
Right? They got to get up early and then they just wear on you, right?
Yeah, well, and that's part like your guys' game last week. It's really hard for the Ravens to win when Lamar turns the ball over twice in the first half and then all of a sudden they're behind. It just doesn't fit what they do.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds insane because the Eagles have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but Jalen Hurts has had a concussion. He's been banged up. His hand's been bothering him at points. And he's coming into a game where
he's got a knee injury now.
He's got a knee, and now they got to play a division opponent. That's the other part of the other factor of that is this will be the third time they play each other this year. And they're going to beat each other up either way. So not to say that the Chiefs and the Bills won't be a physical, like I said, we talked about it. It's going to be a fight. But I just don't think either of the Eagles or the Commanders have the horses in the barn to deal with whoever comes out of the AFC. And I just talked about head coach and quarterback, and I think either AFC team has a decided advantage over head coach and quarterback in whoever comes out of the NFC. So,
yeah, we'll see how it plays out, man. But thank you so much for joining me. Do you want to plug what you got coming up next and where people can find you?
You can find me. Jake's been nice enough to scroll my handle across the bottom of the screen. That's pretty much my handle on all socials. We do the Kingdom Says Pod, been doing it for, good Lord, 200 plus episodes now, several years. That's over at Kingdom Says Pod, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube as well. If you want notifications, bells, stuff, you want to hear what the other side thinks. If you're a Bills fan, happy to have on. We'll be live tonight. I think probably about the same time you guys are. So if you want to check it out after, hop on over after, check that out. We'll be on there. We will have my two co-hosts. I think both of my co-hosts will be there. I know one of them will be. I'm not still not heard back from the other one yet, but he's got life be like that sometimes. So, but we do it there. And then that's pretty much where you find me for the socials and stuff. We will have a ton of draft content. One of my other co-hosts, he's a huge draft guy. He does draft stuff for us all year. We usually have a draft pod as well that we started last year. So that's been on a little bit of a hiatus, but it'll be back coming up towards draft season. So it's a fun time. We appreciate it. We love talking ball with everybody. So thank you for having me on again. I appreciate it. And we're looking forward to this game on Sunday, man. It's going to be a good one. At least I hope.
Thanks again for joining me. And yeah, we'll try to link up, do some off-season content, something like that. So it'll be fun.
Sounds good.
All right. Have a good one.
See you.
All right. Well, thank you to Kyle for joining me on the show. Next up, I got Jeremiah Sirles, former Buffalo Bills offensive lineman. He was nice enough to record with me earlier today. We broke down what he's seen from the Bills offensive line. Also, he was on the Bills in 2018 when Josh was drafted and joined the team, and so we talked about what he's seen from Josh Allen and the growth from him. He played with Deion Dawkins, Milano, so stay tuned for that. It's a really good interview. But first up, a quick message from our network sponsors, and then I will play the Jeremiah Sirles interview.
For the best Italian food in Western New York, Elliot Apollo's, call 716-825-3675. The Lardon Construction Group.
Fubo TV, the official streaming service of Do Champions. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Do Champions.
For all your summertime needs, beauty pools, as well as kayak pools.
CX Chronicles, your total customer solutions focused manager. W.GG, the official energy drink of Do Champions.
Hey, Sons of Erie, our artwork looks better on your walls. Hamburg Brewing, please visit our tap room on Boston State Road, Hamburg, New York. And finally,
Fat Boy Surf Club for all your surfing needs.
All right. Now I will play the interview from earlier today with Jeremiah Sirles, former Buffalo Bills offensive lineman. Enjoy. Feel free to comment during the interview, and I will respond in chat. All right, and now I'd like to welcome my guest for tonight, Jeremiah Sirles. Jeremiah, how's it going?
Fantastic, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much for doing this. Super last minute. For people who don't know, I had a Chiefs content creator originally scheduled. They had a scheduling conflict, family matters, reached out to Jeremiah, and he was thankfully super willing to do this. So thank you again for jumping on last minute.
Yeah, no problem, man. Anytime I get a chance to talk Bills football, I'm never going to say no to that.
Right. Yeah, and this time of year too, man. Couldn't be a better time of year. Season's winding down, and we're getting to arguably some people's favorite week of the year, the AFC and NFC Championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think divisional's probably a little bit more my favorite just because there's more football, right? But I do always think the championship weekend usually outshines the Super Bowl with just the type of games, right? Because it's so easy to get a Super Bowl. Right? You get there and you're like, oh, that team's going to blow out or whatever it is. Like these weekends are usually the rivalries, right? The Allen and the Mahomes, or on the other side now it's Hurts, Daniels, right? In division type things. Like the rivalry in the championship weekend is usually unmatched.
Yeah, exactly. I think the caliber of play on championship weekend is it's so good. You always have two really good two matchups. So. So for a lot of people who might not know, the reason why I wanted you to have you on is selfishly, I live in Nebraska. You played at Nebraska. That's where I got to know you from. And then you found your way through your career to the Bills. But you were on the Bills 2018, Josh Allen's rookie year. Do you want to give people your journey from college to the pros?
Absolutely. So in 20, I played at Nebraska 09 to 13. I went undrafted to the San Diego Chargers in 2014. I spent 6 years in the NFL, one with the Chargers, got traded to the Vikings, was there for 3 years, got released once my contract was up in 17, signed with the Carolina Panthers for camp, got hurt during camp, got released after camp, and then signed with the Bills week 4 of 2018. Ended up starting about 4 or 5 games for them that year when Josh was a rookie. Got re-signed with them again in 19, and then ended up having a career-ending surgery, ankle surgery, which ended up forced me into retirement. From there, I transitioned from player to agent, so I now represent guys in the transfer portal, going into the NFL. I've been certified there since 2021, continuing just to work with different guys and get guys set up and moving in the right direction. So a lot of fun to stay in college, stay in the NFL, because I love both worlds. But I just love being around football, man. I tell people all the time, I have a PhD in football, right? I went to school for 5 years and then got a 6-year post-grad. So, it's a great way to be able to give back without being a coach and having to move my family every 5 years.
Yeah, and then not to mention the agent side of it as well, right? So you really get the full picture of from, college athlete to the transition to the pros, the transition out of the pros, right? And then having to find that career, and then you've now found a career and now helping people do that same thing. So pretty great journey.
Yeah, man, it's a ton of fun and getting to reflect back on the journey that got me there, right? I mean, 2017 going to the NFC Championship with the Vikings and being that close to playing a Super Bowl at home, right? And then being immediately thrown into the next year of a 6-10 Buffalo Bills team, right? But seeing what was being built with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott and guys like Kyle Williams and Lorenzo Alexander have laid the groundwork for what you're seeing today with Deion Dawkins and Josh Allen and those guys that were in those moments there with Matt Milano, right? I see the see where that place was in 18 and to see where it is now does not surprise me in the slightest.
Yeah, that's a great, I guess, point to dive into. So when you were in that locker room, like, especially with guys that are still on the team, you know, Dawkins, Milano, Josh, you know, what have you seen from those guys from then until now? I mean, even in the offensive line room, right? Dawkins is the only guy still there, but man, he's had to have changed a ton from.
Oh my, yeah. I mean,
now, right?
he was a baby. I mean, he was a child, right? He was in his second year in the league, and I mean, I tell people all the time, Deion is still pound for pound one of the best athletes I ever played with in the NFL. Right. I mean, the way he can move and the way he can bend and the strength and the power that he can generate. And, you know, it's really incredible just if you watch and dive into Deion's tape, how great of a player he truly is. And you could see that was in there when he was in that second year, but there was just something not quite clicking. But really that kind of that fourth year, that third year, it all started to turn over for Deion. And I think it's the mental game got slower for him. He understood more and he was able to just really go out there and just be free and play. And so seeing his growth from a guy that had all the potential in the world to capitalize on that potential and go and make out and become an all-pro, Pro Bowl type player has been awesome, right? And same thing for Josh. Everyone knew, maybe besides him, that he was going to be a dude. Right. Like I had been around guys like Phillip Rivers my rookie year. I was with Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Bradford, Case Keenum, Cam Newton. Right. I had been around really good quarterbacks in this league. And when Josh walked in and you watched him practice and watched him throw the ball and watched him move around, you're like, this dude's got it. Right. Like, and I don't know how to explain what it is, but you can just feel it when there's a player that walks in the building as a rookie and you're like, yep, that guy's going to be a stud, right? I felt it with Dalvin Cook when he came to the Vikings. Yep, that guy's going to be a stud. Daniil Hunter, that guy's going to be a stud. You knew Josh had all those opportunities going to be in front of him. And to see the way that he's grown and he's matured really this year, right? The elimination of the negative plays, not taking sacks, not throwing the football to the other football team, and then just the way he uses his legs and whatnot has been so fun to watch those guys mature in real time over that piece, over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah, it's crazy the growth from those guys. I mean, Deion is like a fine wine, right? Like he only gets better with time. You could say this is his best season. Last year was another, you know, nice jump for him. The splits he does are insane too. Like if maybe you could talk about that since you're a O-line guy as well and you study it. Like the fact he lines up like, you know, level almost with the center, like, and then even out wide as well sometimes is just diabolical and just shows how athletic he is. But maybe talk about like that and the challenge of that or how difficult that is to actually do.
Yeah, it blows my mind personally, right? I was always the guy that's like, I'm going to get every inch back off this ball that I can, to the point where like my helmet's got to break that belt line. Yeah, by about like the skin of my hairline here. Right.
Well, you see Jawan Taylor do that, right? For the Chiefs, the right tackle, right? He's as far back literally as you can be.
I mean, usually further back, but for whatever reason, they don't get it called because, you know, they're the Chiefs.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the ability to line up on the ball and tell the D lineman, like, hey, I'm putting myself on the island out here. Right. First of all, I think people see big split and they kind of panic a little bit. Actually, a big split helps you as a tackle because guess what? The defensive end is now further away from the quarterback. Yeah. Right. And it's a weird thing because it is harder to pass off stunts. It is harder to pass off games or do a combo block. But if you know it's third down and you're going to get the slide of going away from you, all you do is you take another yard split there. All that does is make that D end have to travel 1 yard further, right? Because he's going to line up off of you. Right. And Deion is so explosive on his first two kicks of getting out of his stance where he kicks 1-2 and he's right back where he needs to be, to where I think that if he did line up off the ball, he'd end up oversetting everyone. Right?
He did do that, right? Like earlier, you could see that he had a tendency to get beat inside because of that, right?
Yeah, because he's so explosive and he gets out of his stance so quickly. He was oversetting everyone. So he's like, oh, screw that. I'll just scoot up here and I'm just more athletic than everyone. I'll just get back off the ball and be in perfect position. He is one of one with that stuff. There is not another tackle in the league that does the stuff that he does as far as alignment, splits, that type of thing. But he has learned that's how the snowman needs to play, right? And that's how he's going to be out there, and he's just made such a great name for himself.
Is that do you think that's a Cromer thing? Like, is that an Aaron Cromer working with him to try to figure out what works best for him? Because we didn't see that kind of stuff, 3-4 years ago from him.
I do. Yeah, I think Cromer probably sat down with him and was like, okay, why do we think this is happening? Right? Why do we think we're oversetting? Deion's probably like, man, I just feel like I'm just kicking. He's like, well, you're just getting there too quickly, right? So let's cut some of the space down. Let's move you up on the ball, right? And if that doesn't work, we can always move you back, right? If it doesn't work, and then it ends up just working, and he just kept drilling it, and now it just looks so natural to him of that up on the ball, get back off, throw that left hand, stab it out there, and punch the guy. He's such a good independent hand striker as well. He's just continuing to put more and more tools in his tool belt every single year. And when you have a guy that can be a technician like that with the athletic ability that he has, that's how you become the Trent Williams and the Tyron Smiths and the guys that play for 10, 11 years with their technique, but also because God gifted them with such great athletic ability.
Yeah, and that's something that I've had to learn too. Is it's not even just so much your feet and your base. Yes, those are super important, but your hands, man. Like the next level from Spencer Brown and from Deion Dawkins, like how they use their hands, how aggressive they are in attacking and combating, the defensive players. Can you maybe talk about that and how important your hand usage is?
Yeah, it's the number one thing I talk about with my rookies going into the NFL is you can get away in college without using your hands. In the NFL, you're going to die. You're going to die. Those dudes are going to throw you. They're going to grab you. They're going to pull you. They're going to run right down your chest. If you can't strike in this league, you can't play. And these two tackles specifically, and I even think Osiris Torrance does a nice job of using his hands. They are not afraid to cut those things loose and go. And you see it because the defensive ends are almost a little hesitant as they get close of like, oh, I'm going to get smacked here. Right. And then they let them go. And then both of them have tremendous trap moves, right? The trap moves where they back up, knock the hands down.
Can you talk about that? The snap trap, like how hard is that to actually do? Because they make it look easy and they do it multiple times a game.
Yeah. And if the refs keep calling a holding penalty, I'm eventually going to break a television, right? I'm going to get really close to putting my fist through a television because they're like, oh, well, it's like, dude, obviously if he just chops, and Deion even put his hands up, right? He chopped and lifted his hands and they still threw it. Unbelievable. Right. But the timing that takes so much practice, right? Because it's really is a feel thing. You have to feel that defensive end out with his weight way too forward, or else if you go to chop and he doesn't have his weight forward, you're in trouble. But both those guys have such a great feeling. And a lot of it just comes from the fact that in their initial set, they are very square and they are very balanced, right? If you're square and balanced, you're going to be able to feel that defensive end. Hey, he's got two hands now and he's really leaning. Cool. One hop back, trap him. Right. And it's such a good change up because it doesn't allow the defensive ends to feel like they can just bull rush you at any time. Right. If a defensive end feels like he's got the beat on you and he's just going to be able to, hey, I can go 1, 2, 3 right down your chest, then any move can work off of that. Right. Now you go 1, 2, 3, bull rush, spin, bull rush to a hop out, the ghost rush move. Right. But if you don't feel like your baseline can be that bull rush, because if you try and get to the bull rush, you're going to get put on your face. It just makes their moves much more consistent. Now they have to go off 3 or they have to go off 5 or 2 or 4, depending on which foot's up. Right. And so you just you can key into that and be like, if you want to bull rush me, I'm taking you down, man. Like that's just how this is going to be. And if you can get a good rhythm with that, it's really, really frustrating for a defensive end.
Yeah. I guess another good aspect of that too is like, the bull rush is so deadly because of not only what you can build off of it, but also the depth of pocket, right? You compress the pocket. So if you can stop that bull rush, then I think that really helps you set the depth of pocket.
Yeah, and the other piece is if you bull rush, you see a lot of bull rushing against guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, because it's trying to keep them in the pocket.
The cage rush.
Right? Yeah, the cage rush, right? It's, hey, you can't run around these two tackles because they're just going to run you up and Josh is just going to step underneath and escape out of the pocket. So the idea is you kind of just compress him, right? You want to compress the width of the pocket. And you always taught as an offensive lineman, tackles are the width of the pocket. The guard centers are the depth of the pocket, right? You want to have a nice little dish for your quarterback to sit back there. Well, if that depth starts getting that width starts getting compressed in a little bit, right? Quarterbacks don't have anywhere to really escape. But if you're risk or reward here, you want to bull rush and Dion or Spencer puts you on your face. Well, now Josh is getting out of that thing for sure because you're picking the turf beads up out of your eyes, right? So it just puts a lot of pressure on those defensive ends to make a decision on a rush move that they might not want to make.
Yeah, that's a great point. Getting to the rest of the O-line, what have you seen? How about like Connor McGovern, that transition from guard to center, and the fact that he hasn't played it since his college days. Like, how difficult is that? What have you seen from that transition?
Yeah, I mean, the interior three here are really the engine that makes this running game go, right? Osiris Torrance, Connor McGovern, David Edwards, right? Those three guys in combination here, with the way that they can move guys on the zone blocking, get up on the linebackers, dent the double teams, they have really been the engine that makes this thing go. And, anytime you see Dion pulling around, right, it's off of a double team with Osiris and Spencer Brown, and then boom, here comes Dion for the linebacker. I've really loved what Cromer's done in finding ways to use the strengths of this offensive line properly, right? It's not square peg, round hole. This is my system. Here's how we're doing it. It's Cromer going, hey, we have a really athletic left tackle. Let's pull him and get him in space, right? Hey, we have a really good mauler at right guard and Osiris Torrance. Let's put him on double teams with Spencer Brown, right? He's using all of those guys in their best capacities. And, considering to see McGovern get everyone lined up and seeing the way he can command the protections. I was just breaking down all the third down blitzes with my rookies from Josh this year, right? And you see Connor up there, hey, there's the new mic. Let's move over here. Communication wise, everything flows very, very smoothly between Josh to him to everyone else. And, that's not a transition I thought he'd be able to make that quickly and that smoothly. But again, that goes back to Brandon Beane identifying the right players to be able to fit and be versatile inside this scheme of Joe Brady.
Yeah, and you kind of saw that earlier in the year. They had some communication issues in the interior with stunts and games, and that was a big concern through at least the Texans game. And then you saw them; they figured that out, man. They have answers. They know where the blitz is coming. The pass protection has been really, really solid. So yeah, that's been super impressive for the interior.
14 sacks. Right,
Yeah,
that's nuts. That's nuts. I mean, you're talking about a guy, Caleb Williams, got sacked 68 times this year.
Yeah.
Like 14 is nuts.
CJ Stroud got sacked 8 times last week.
Yeah,
against the Chiefs. Like
100%.
Crazy. So unbelievable from those guys. Anything else you've seen from that O-line that stood out this year from watching them?
Just the consistency in play. That's just been the big thing, right? The best compliment you can ever receive as an offensive lineman is that you're consistent. And I think that this has been one of the most consistent, maybe behind the Lions, maybe slightly behind the Eagles, right? They're kind of right there. But this is a top 3 offensive line in all of NFL football for me.
Here's one for you. So the Bills like to split running duo and zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how, as an offensive lineman, do you have a preference that you like one or the other? Is it difficult to switch back and forth? Does one let you do something differently than the other?
No, I think if you can be able to run both of them very efficiently, they're great complements to each other, right? Because if you can start hitting guys with zone schemes, right? I always like to lead with the zone because anytime you can get defensive linemen moving laterally instead of vertically, it really puts a pressure on the linebackers, right? Because now new gaps are created, guys are moving. All it takes is one guy to get out of his gap, and then there's the hole, right? So if you can get the zone game going, those D linemen become a little bit more hesitant of just firing up the field because they need to read, hey, where's my first step going? Where's my hat going? What's my angle departure here? And then you hit them with that a few times and they get a little hesitant. That's when you come with the hammer of duo right downhill. And that's when you can really get that displacement with the double teams, really get guys moving off the ball. Those linebackers now are used to going laterally, so they're a little late on the trigger, right? So I love the combination of duo and zone. It's what actually helped us get to our NFC Championship run in 2017 is we ran a ton of weak side inside zone to, the 2 tight sets and whatnot. And then as they would get used to that, then we'd hammer them with the double teams that come out of 13 personnel or 21 personnel and hammer them with double teams, hammer them. Then once they start teeing off again, then you come back and hit them with another outside zone, right? So you really can keep a defensive lineman on your heels if you can continue to be really good at running those things and picking and choosing the right times.
Yeah, and man, Dalvin Cook at that point was
ridiculous. Cooking.
He was unreal.
He was cooking, man.
So good. I mean, James Cook's been unreal, but different type of runners. But man, Dalvin was
just such a home run hitter. Like,
he was.
you know, blocking for him, you knew that it didn't matter if it was lead ISO or outside zone or whatever. Like, this dude can take it every time. Like, one dude gone and freaking see ya.
So here's one for you. This year, James has kind of added the
Mhm.
power element to his game, right? He was known more as a finesse guy. This year, you really see him running over his feet, pressing for more yards, carrying piles. As an offensive lineman, like, how does that get you guys motivated when
Yeah.
you see your running back fighting for more yards, getting those big pileups? You see, Spencer Brown or Torrance dragging the pile with them. Like, what does that do for you guys to fire you up when you see your running back really fighting for those yards?
Yeah, it's a big attitude, man. It's just an attitude adjuster and it's a tone setter, right? When you have a back that is like a hammer back there and you know he's going to not avoid contact and he's going to run and fall forward for 4 even if he gets hit at 2, it just makes the attitude of the entire run game different. And everyone buys into that attitude of, hey, if he's up, push him, right? He's not going down easy, and protect that guy, help him up, and at times don't let him take the big hits, right? Let's make some space for him. And I thought that, yeah, James Cook did a great job this offseason of putting some muscle mass on his upper body and understanding, hey, to be a bell cow running back in this league, you got to be big. You got to be able to absorb those shots, take those hits, and on week in and week out basis for an 18-game season. So
And
I mean,
avoid
credit
the
to
negative
him.
runs too, right?
Yes.
That's something he's done as well, is really avoid those negative runs.
Yeah, and that's a big piece of becoming more of a power versus a finesse, right? With the finesse, you're always looking for the home run. You're like, hey, okay, it's not quite there. Let's bounce this to the corner and see if I can't outrun the corner. And then, oh, shoot, he got me 2-yard loss. Versus when you put that element of I'm a bigger back, okay, there's not a lot here. Well, look, there's the D gap, right? And let's just pile in there for 3-4 yards and come back and fight another day. 2nd and 6 and 2nd and 7 is a lot better than 2nd and 12.
Yeah. And it also helps you guys as an O-line unit too, though, right? You guys get knocked for those negative runs, or it takes you out of a running situation for the next play. But instead, when he cuts it up, puts his nose in there, and gets a couple yards, it lets you guys be able to stay on schedule, run the ball again, and just be more consistent with the run game.
Absolutely. And, from a consistent point for us, but also taking the load off of Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Josh Allen for so many years has just had to be like, all right, here comes the Superman cape. I have to do this all on my own. With the addition of this run game, between the combination of how the O-line's blocking and with James Cook being what he is, Josh doesn't have to shoulder that big of a load. And it's why you don't need him to throw the ball 55 times a game anymore, right? You do that, bad things are going to happen eventually. It's just the law of averages, right? And so taking some of the load off of him and being able to disperse it amongst others has really helped him eliminate those negative plays on his end as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. It's a big storyline for this game. I think the Bills have to be able to run the ball, stay on schedule, and stay out of those 3rd and longs. I think it's going to be really big.
Yeah, you do not want to fall behind the sticks against the Spagnuolo defense, man. Yeah. They're going to be geared up. They're familiar with this team. They know how they want to get after guys here. Staying ahead of the sticks and first down is going to be more important in this game than really any game up to the point in this season, because the second you let Spags get those exotic looks out there and moving guys around, and now is it 3-man, is it 4-man, and Chris Jones is picking his poison of where he wants to rush, now you're playing into their hands, especially on the road, right? They're going to get last chance.
Can you talk about that
here
a little bit? So hostile environment on the road, how does that affect communication, protection, call-outs, all that stuff?
Yeah, so the big thing is it's just going to take more communication on the road, right? At home, it's really easy. You can hear it on the TV cover, right? Wide 80, Brown 60, hot, hot, hot. He comes up, hey, let's go new mic over here, right? But when you're on the road and it's loud and it's crazy, it's really easy for there to be one miscommunication in the chain of command. Right. And if you have one miscommunication where the left guard thought we were sliding left and the left tackle thought we were sliding right, and now here comes the free rusher off the edge, that's what leads to sacks. That's what leads to, MEs, because you just didn't hear it. Right. So you have to be so dialed in on your communication from quarterback to center to running back. Like everyone, hand signals become much more important, whether it's, hey, 5-0 or Ricky Lucy, right, left, whatever your hand signals are, making sure the backs are keyed into that. Josh echoing that to the backs, right? It is definitely much harder on the road because it's just harder to make sure everyone's on the same page, right? Because that's where the big negative plays happen, is where it's just one person making one mental error.
And then what about a familiar opponent? Like obviously they've seen each other a ton the last couple years. Fourth time in the playoffs. They saw each other week 11. How much does that help the O-line unit going against the D-line, or is there issues with that because they become so used to you?
It's a blessing and a curse, right? That's the best way I can do it, because yes, you are familiar with what they're going to do and how they're going to operate, and they are as well. But it kind of can lull you to sleep a little bit in that you think you know what you're expecting, right? Hey, this is what they did last time, so I'm preparing for that. And then if they come out something completely different, schematic wise or pass rush wise, you're like, oh, wasn't ready for that, right? So you have to try and take it as a new game, right? And watching their most recent game, not your most recent game against them, but really watching their most recent game and going, this is the Kansas City Chiefs that we're facing, not the ones we faced in week 11, not the ones we faced back in the game last time, right? But that this is what we're doing. How are we going to attack this, right? And then also seeing and going back and watching what did they do well against us initially, because they're going to test that early, right? If they did something well in week 11 where they got after the quarterback or they stuffed a run, they're going to get back to that early and see if the Bills have fixed that. And the same thing on the Bills, on the Chiefs offense, they're going to get back to some things that they felt like they did well against the Bills initially, and then they're going to copycat league some of the stuff the Ravens did against us last week.
Can you touch on, so Spencer Brown missed the week 11 game, and the Bills had to do different things in the run game and the pass game. Can you maybe touch on when an offensive lineman like that, especially even a bookend, right tackle, someone who's more influential on the run game and the things that the Bills want to do, like how much does that change the game planning for this week versus, week 11?
Yeah, a ton, right? When you really feel like you have two lockdown tackles, you don't have to worry about, hey, where do we want to slide this to, right? We can truly slide the protection to the most dangerous threat. Right? Is it to the field? Is it to the boundary? Are we just going to find 95 and slide to him, right? It allows you to do freedom with that. When you just have one of your bookend tackles, you're always going to be thinking about, how do I help my backup tackle? And that's not a slam on backup alignment. Crap, I made a great career as being a backup alignment, but it's just different when your starter's not in there. Right. So when your starter's in there and you've got full trust on, hey, if I slide left, I know Spencer's got this locked up. I slide right, I'm not worried about Dion over there. It just gives so much more freedom to slide it wherever you want to go to make Josh feel the most protected.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I feel like also it affects, what they want to do in the run game because, tackle trap, pulling the tackles. Traditionally you see more interior guys get pulled, but the Bills like to pull their tackles because they're so athletic. And then, even bringing in like the sixth O lineman. Did you do any of that in your career?
Oh yeah, I got like six. I got six
like,
starts. I got 6 starts to my name because.
See, I thought you were listed as like a tight end for part of
yeah,
it too, right? Because
yep.
you lined up like that.
I did a lot of heavy tight end, right?
Yeah.
13 muscle, 12 muscle, all that fun stuff. Got to run in there, and they use. Forgive me for not knowing his name. Number 70. Alex Anderson. Yeah, he comes in and does a lot of that stuff and does a very good job with it.
Yeah, he's phenomenal at it. So how does that change from when you're, the tackle eligible or the outside tackle? Is there different things you're learning? Like, is there anything that more goes into that?
You just have to actually listen to formations. That's kind of, I always listened to formations as an offensive lineman. I never really paid attention to where they lined up. Right. It's like, hey, trips left, trips right, doubles left, trade left, dose left. You're like, oh, well, the tight end's over there somewhere. Right. But when you're a tight end, you're like, wait, am I on the ball? Am I off the ball? Right. And so just pay attention to that. And then it's amazing to me how just one guy removed outside of the tackle, how much harder it is to hear the snap count. Right. Like at tackle, you're kind of just like, oh, yeah, it's right there. But I remember the first time I was in a game, I was like, dude, speak up. Like, Josh, use your big boy voice. And he's like, dude, I'm saying it how I normally do. I was like, man, I didn't realize how just one more removed outside made it that much harder to hear.
That's a great point. So if you're going silent count and you're on the road, like how does that being on the outside like that? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I remember as a tackle, you could always kind of periph the ball, but at tight end, you can't really see the ball. It's so far away. You're really periphing the tackle, right? And so I would watch Dion, or I'd watch Jordan Mills, I think is who it was over there.
Sounds
right. Like I would just watch, and as soon as they moved, I would move. Right. And so it's more one of those things of just, if you could, you'd sneak up on the ball a little bit and try and peek and see if you could see the head bob. Right. But for the most time, it was really just keying off when your guy moved.
Okay. Last one for the O-line. because we're running out of time. But so Joe Tooney, left guard, moving to left tackle. Do you want to talk about that? Because you've played guard and tackle. Like, how hard is that to transition? You know, what is challenging from that? He also has shorter arms, so maybe talk a little bit about all that.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I can't speak enough of how incredibly talented that man is, right?
Yeah.
To win 2 Super Bowls with the Patriots, to now winning 2 Super Bowls with the Chiefs, going for his 5th now, right? I mean, unbelievable talent in that regard. But people, I don't think, understand the transition of a guy that's played guard his whole life and then bumping out to tackle is nuts. Right, guys that bump inside, like tackles a guard. I always tell people the worse you are, the more they kind of just bump you inside until eventually, like, can you play center? Because you're kind of old and can't move anymore. Right, but a guy that has been an All-Pro at left guard, and they're like, listen, we're dying out here, right? Kingsley wasn't the move. Wanya Morris wasn't the move. DJ Humphries is hurt. We got to get you out here, man. And for him to just go out there and just be such a technician, to be able to stay in front of guys and clean guys up and keep Patty upright has been amazing. I will say last week he got exposed a little bit, right? With the length of Daniil Hunter and the length of Will Anderson. Yep. Well, the Bills defense has built themselves to beat the Chiefs, right? Yep. Gregory Rousseau, very long levered guy. AJ Epinesa, long levered guy. Von Miller, quick off the edge. He's starting to get his juice back a little bit. Right. So you're looking going, okay, Tooney's probably going to struggle with a guy like Gregory Rousseau, who's got those longer arms to be able to get into him and set those things up versus guys that he's faced in the past. Right. So I would be shocked if maybe they try and put DJ Humphries back out there this week to see if maybe he can go based off that, just because I do think that last week, you know, that you let Pandora's box open a little bit with that. And the Bills defense is definitely going to try and come after that.
Yeah. And then you're also weaker at left guard, right? I mean, he is literally the best left guard in football, right? So you get worse there, and then not to mention you're not as good at left tackle. So yeah, that's fascinating. That's a big switch to put DJ out there, but it totally makes sense as far as, then you're not as strong in the interior. And you saw week 11, the Bills were having success pressuring them on the interior as well. So how about we get to what you think in this game? Where do you think it's going to go? How do you see it going? Because I know you're running out of time, and I don't want to keep you too long.
No, you're good. So I think this is going to be a classic Bills-Chiefs game. I don't think it's fair to say, oh, Bills are going to steamroll or Chiefs are going to roll. I mean, 2 great quarterbacks, arguably the best 2 quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion. And, the way I look at this is Josh has had the better year, right? He has statistically negative plays, commanding the offense. He has had the better year. Do I bet against playoff Pat? It's hard for me to do considering they've won 2 in a row, right? But I really do feel like this is the Bills' year. I feel like everything is gearing up to this. Yes, they have to go to Arrowhead. Yes, they have to pass through the reigning champions here. But watching the Bills and how they fought last week with, the Ravens coming back and how they got to a hot start and whatnot, it just seems like the ball is bouncing the Bills' way this year. And I hope that they can just bounce their way one more time this week in Arrowhead and force Pat to throw a couple bad interceptions, as long as Josh plays within himself and doesn't make this Josh versus Mahomes, but it is truly Bills versus Chiefs, right? And you put it as a team atmosphere there. I really do think that the Bills get it done this weekend.
Awesome, man. Well, I hope you're right. Do you want to tell people what you have going on, what your podcast, what you're working on, where they can find you?
Yeah, so I have a secondary our main podcast. It's called the O-Line Committee. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. It's essentially myself and Alex Boone and Phil Mackey. Alex Boone stayed 10 years in the NFL as an offensive lineman. We crossed over Minnesota. Phil Mackey runs a massive Minnesota talk podcast up in Minnesota, but this is all things NFL. We break down film. We had a great Josh Allen breakdown last week of how they gritted it out against the Ravens, right? And we just continue to look in, and it's an offensive line lifestyle podcast. So you want to go check that out over there. Again, it's the O-Line Committee on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully we can have you on in the off season.
Absolutely. Great having me on here. And as always, go Bills.
Go Bills. Well, what a great guest Jeremiah was. Thanks again to him for joining me. Incredible insight into the offensive line room, preparing for the playoffs, how to deal with on the road. as we get to wrapping this thing up, we've heard from the Chiefs side, we've heard the inside now from the Bills' perspective as far as the offensive line and stuff like that. What do you want to get into the player props real quick?
Yeah, I want to say two things first. First thing is, you had told me before the show that interview was really good. That blew me away. That was sick, dude. Like, phenomenal insight, great information. Just like, I learned more in that 30 minutes about what goes on in the trenches than I've probably learned the last 3 years of my life. That was sick. Second question is, dude, what is the 24 jersey behind you there? I know it's not on camera, but it comes up when you're on your own.
That's Cole Bishop, man.
Why do you have a Cole Bishop? I mean, he's on the. Why do you have a Cole Bishop jersey?
All right, so the reason why Donnie is asking me that, for people that don't know, I'm not a jersey guy. I've never had a jersey until his dad bought me a jersey. The first jersey he bought us all Stephon Diggs jerseys. So I'm not a jersey guy normally. When Diggs left the Bills, we got Josh Allen jerseys, all of us, to replace the Diggs jerseys. And so I have a Josh Allen jersey that most people see behind me. What is that, over my right shoulder? Yeah. And then I got Cole Bishop over my left shoulder or whatever. But yeah, so I was in Buffalo for the game with you, Jaguars. Monday Night Football was at week 3. Yeah. And we were driving around and we went into one of like the local memorabilia shops, and they had jerseys in there, and they had a Cole Bishop jersey in there, and it was like ridiculously cheap. And I don't know, I just figured it'd be great for the set. I like Cole Bishop's game a lot, and I think he's going to be around for a while. And so
he's going to play hopefully plays a massive role in this game.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm foreshadowing, man. He could be the difference maker.
I just saw it back there, and I'm like 24. Who's worn? There's only been a couple guys who've worn 24 in the history of the Bills. It was like, maybe it's a Bishop jersey, but I had to ask.
Terrence McGee.
Terrence McGee, yeah, that was the name. I was thinking, I was like, I had a Terrence McGee jersey growing up. I mean, I think it was him and Brian Mormon were the two jerseys I had.
There you go.
Till Freddie came around. But yeah, let's get into predictions.
Let's do a couple player props. Then we'll do keys to or a blueprint to a Bills victory, and then we'll do score predictions. So
we talking just the Bills game, or are we talking the whole weekend?
We're just doing Bills game. We're just going to touch a couple because, again, if you want more insight into player props, betting for this game, please obviously bet responsibly. But we do have a betting show called No One to Blame. It's on Sunday morning this week. I want to say 11 a.m. Eastern time. It might be noon Eastern time, but check Do Champions social media, and we'll put out the time for that. But we're going to go in depth on both games and give you all the player prop handles, the daily fantasy, all that stuff. So I just want to hit the basic ones, just because every week this year I've covered Bills and their opponents' player props. So. Are you did you key in on anything for this game? Anything stand out to you? I have a couple. I try not to go too heavy in this game, but anything surprise you?
The only prop so I like to try and stay away from the Bills games and all betting purposes, because like, as a Bills fan, you're going to be a little biased and you try to not be. So I'll try to listen from outside sources about Bills props, but the anytime touchdowns are pretty, like, they're all over the place this week.
Yeah, they are.
I know you had touched on it earlier in the show.
Ty Johnson.
Yeah.
Ty Johnson's plus 800, which is insane.
So I did something interesting that I generally don't bet, and they're long shots, but they're not parlays. They're just single bets. Von Miller to record a sack.
Okay, I like it.
I went with that. Like I'm hoping it have. Well, first thing is I got Travis Kelce touchdown at plus 115. Like, plus money on a Kelce touchdown, it's hard to ignore. But Von Miller.
What's the odds on Von Miller to record a sack? It's got to be plus.
Yeah, so I got I got him at plus 325.
Yeah.
Like, to record a sack, it's just over half a sack, so it would push if he got half a sack. But you had touched on it with Jeremiah, is like if Tooney's out there and Vaughn's able to get around, he's showing his speed, he's flashed last week, he flashed in the Broncos
See, I think
game,
he's
like,
going to go against the right side and go
the
against
right
Jawan
side.
Taylor.
Either way, like I could see him getting a sack at some point in this game, and plus 325. I took a real long shot in this one, and this is solely based on how I could, and I'm hoping that Benford plays because then this kind of changes it. But Bernard to record an interception is plus 1,200 for me.
Oh, he had that crazy one last time.
He had it the last time, and like if it becomes a shootout and they're throwing the ball around, and it could just take one turnover, and Bernard's been finding a way to the football all season. And he wasn't there last year in the playoffs when we played him. And
yeah,
I don't know. I took a long shot on that. As far as I stayed away from this game, I went mostly to Commanders Eagles, which I know you'll touch on later. So the only thing that did speak to me a little bit is Xavier Worthy. Over 3.5 rushing yards. Some books have it at 4.5. Now, last week I got crushed on this. I think his line was 0.5 or 1.5, and he had -8.
Yeah. They did two wide receiver runs last game against us. So.
He's going to get the ball in those situations. It might be down to the goal line. Like Andy Reid's going to do something weird. So, what do you like for this game? I'm sure you got more than I do.
Yeah, I'll just touch on a couple. So I like Ty Johnson and Ray Davis rushing yards in this game. They're really low. Ty Johnson's 6.5 over/under rushing yards, and Ray Davis was 9.5. I think if the Bills want to win this game, I think they got to run the ball. They got to establish the ground game, and they got to mix it up with different personnel packages and different guys. And so I think all these guys are going to get a couple carries, a couple touches, and so I like both of those. And then Curtis Samuel over 15.5 receiving yards. It just seems criminally low to me for how much they like to use him and move him around. So I like that. And then, like I said, the anytime touchdowns, Ty Johnson plus 800 and Curtis Samuel plus 800 just seem crazy values. The only other one on the Chiefs side that I like that you didn't talk about was just Kareem Hunt. His rushing yards are only 35.5. I just think that's really low. And no matter the game script, I still think the Chiefs are going to run the ball, especially early, or at least try to run the ball. They did it in that Week 11 matchup. Hunt had like 11 carries or 16 carries, I think, for like 60 yards or something.
Yeah.
So 35.5 just seems pretty low. But that's about it for player props. Again, tune in Sunday morning on No One to Blame, and we will go over in depth with way more plays that we like in different angles. All right, so what about a blueprint to a Bills victory? We'll start on offense. What's one thing that you think the Bills have to do for a blueprint to a victory on offense?
I don't know if there's one thing that they have to do. Take care of the football is obviously the most obvious one. I do want to say one thing. I've been thinking about this today. We posted our keys to victory, and it didn't make its way in there. But it's just something that I was thinking about is don't be afraid to break the glass in case of emergency and just let Josh be Josh. Like, he's been playing very much so into the system. He's taking care of the football. But if at a certain point the Bills are, you can feel the momentum shifting and you just need Josh. Like, Brady should get on the mic with him and just tell him, Josh, like, go do something. We haven't seen that out of him this postseason. He hasn't needed to do it, but like, everything's on the line in this game. Don't be afraid to break the glass in case of emergency kind of situation. What do you think on the offensive side?
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of leaning into that for me is a fast start. The Bills have got to get out to a fast start, score touchdowns early and often. You saw that in the Week 11 matchup. They were able to force a turnover from Patrick Mahomes early, and then they drove right down the field and scored a touchdown. I think they have to be aggressive early. I'm looking for McDermott to set the tone with that as far as the team and be aggressive, man. I think on offense and defense, they need to be aggressive early and set the tone and really put it to Kansas City, not sit back and play timid or defensive.
Mm-hmm.
The other key I had on offense was I think that this is a running back game, man. They got to be involved in the run game and the pass game. And then for the tight ends, it's give Josh quick outlets and easy yards. I think for both those is going to be huge. Can the offensive line, create running lanes? Can the running backs take advantage of that? I think less that you got to put on Josh, the better, and then let him pick and choose his spots instead of feeling like he's got to, do it all.
I want to touch on something there. So we talked about it a little bit. You talked about it with Jeremiah. If Spags does something out of the ordinary, I mean, Spags has blitzed Josh historically. They blitz, they play a lot of man, they play cover zero. Like the Ravens did that a lot last week, and Josh saw it, diagnosed it, called it out, and kind of shredded their cover zero blitzes last week, especially when they're playing man.
Against Denver as well, he did.
Yeah, against Denver too, which we knew Denver was going to blitz. They blitz, I think it was like third highest rate in football.
I think the Chiefs blitz like the 6th highest.
Yeah, so like does Spags just sit back and play a bunch of zone, and it just seems a little. I'm just curious, like what you would expect from an offensive side if the Bills got that look. I mean, historically,
I think it's definitely going to be multiple. He's going to mix it up a lot. He likes to run a lot of man in third down situations, and kind of keep Josh on his toes. You saw it late in the game where he switched it up and ran zone.
Yeah.
And the Bills thought they were going to see man. So I think he's going to try to switch it up, keep him guessing, and then that's on Josh it's on Josh and Brady. I think it's on to Joe Brady to have the right play calls and then have the right alternate play call. And then it's on Josh to identify what he thinks it's going to be able to switch it. And then like you saw on that, and at the end of the game, the 4th and 2 where he ended up running for it, like they thought they had the right play call right against the right look. Spags switched it up on him and had the perfect defense for the play call. And Josh has to add. That's when you want Josh to ad lib, and he made an amazing play.
That's the break glass in case of emergency, right?
Right, exactly. So it was good on good, and then you let your guy make a play. So yeah, I think you got to be ready for whatever Spags is going to do. You have to be ready for the blitzes and the exotic pressures, cornerback blitzes, all kinds of stuff against him. And the Bills did a really good job against that, like you said, the last 2 weeks. And against Kansas City in Week 11, and so I'm interested to see how they do in this game. What about Bills defense? What's something for you that is a key to a Bills victory?
I think so much of it relies on Benford playing. So I'm gonna assume he.
Were you surprised they ruled Rapp out already?
He was day to day. Something maybe that he just didn't progress. Like he has a hip.
But why announce it now?
Yeah,
that was my thing. Like, what is the benefit of announcing it now versus waiting?
McDermott's always been pretty upfront with injuries, and the Bills.
It's just not gamesmanship, right? Like
it's not.
You let them know right away.
Yeah.
Right? So
it is odd, but I think Benford. By the way, he was DNP today. It was not because of the concussion. He had
personal
a personal
reasons,
day.
Yeah.
We're not sure why, so I hope everything's okay with him. But
Kyle, the guest, had mentioned that that is a strategy teams have used before. It is in the concussion protocol that you can miss a practice that's not related to football or symptoms, right? Like personal reasons or something.
Right.
And it doesn't count as like a missed practice or something, and you can still clear the protocol. It also helps that you didn't have to go through like a contact practice and then see if you had symptoms. So it is something to watch. I don't think it means anything as far as him not playing. Hopefully everything's all right in his personal life and everything like that. And hopefully he can play. But I do agree with you. I think he's massive for their game.
It's massive. Like you lose the ability to play.
Brown on the outside, right?
You lose your ability to play as much man.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust Elam out there if he's active to play man all the time, or Cam Lewis or whoever they throw out there out wide. But let's just assume he is playing. Defensively, it's been then key to victory. We've talked about it. You've talked about it all show. Is win at the line of scrimmage with 4. You have to. It's really just as simple as that. It doesn't matter what you do in coverage. You can cover all day, but if you give Mahomes all day to throw the ball, he's going to find somebody open. It may take 6 seconds, 8 seconds. It won't matter. So get home, ideally in under 3 seconds, but 2 would be phenomenal. What about you?
I had no explosive plays, especially for touchdowns. So keep the lid on with Rap out. I think that really affects them. He's kind of their star. You know, he plays deep safety. They bring him into the box a lot. They match him up different ways, and so I think that's going to be something to watch. I do worry about the deep plays with Worthy and with Marquise Brown out there. They have been trying it more, the Chiefs, but they just haven't been very successful. So I wouldn't be surprised if they tried a couple times. And you know Andy Reid's going to be able to scheme up some stuff that's going to cause some confusion. And so if you are going to give up a big pass or two, like just don't let it be touchdowns. That's the big thing for me is no easy touchdowns, no big touchdowns.
The Bills have been giving up big touchdowns in the playoffs, which has been kind of uncharacteristic, but they've been doing more man defense, which if you get beat, it results in big plays rather than the zone. So I think they'll be okay if they get beat deep once. If you get beat 2, 3, 4 times, then it becomes a problem.
For sure.
Go ahead. No, you had one other thing.
Yeah, the other blueprint victory and defense for me for the Bills is they have to have a plan on third down for Kelsey and for Mahomes. I think those are the two guys you can't let beat you, right? Like they did a really good job with bracketing Kelsey in week 11 and sometimes in the past, but I think if you run zone on those downs with him, he's just going to eat you up, or just single man on him, he's going to eat you up. So I think you got to bracket him, have safety help or a linebacker help as well. And then Mahomes, like you cannot let him scramble for first downs and just run around back there. I really liked the stuff they were doing where they were having a spy be either Bernard or Milano and rushing 3 defensive linemen. And I want to see that as well. And then go get Mahomes, right? Move him off his spot. So you got to have a plan for this game. And I think you have to have some things that maybe he hasn't seen before as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I know we touched on those two sides. The one thing I do want to touch on is I really hope this game doesn't come down to special teams, because we will lose the game if it comes down to special teams.
I got faith in if it comes down to like Bass kick.
I'm not talking about a field goal. I'm talking about like special teams miscues, like a punt return, a kick return, busted punt coverage.
Right.
Just
you can't have a blocked kick in this game. Like,
can't have a blocked kick.
No block field goal, no block punt.
No block punts. Like this is not the game to do it.
No return kickoff.
Smiley always keeps us on our edge of our seats all season.
Yeah. No, that's a good one for sure.
Just keep it neutral. Like kick the ball to the back of the end zone. Let him start at the 30, man.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Any other talking points you got before we do score predictions?
No, just enjoy it. It's tough to play in the AFC Championship game, win or lose. Like, I don't think most of Bills fans thought we were going to be here. Definitely not national media. So let's just enjoy it. I hope we win. Obviously, all of us do. But if they lose, they had a great season, man. It's tough to argue that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you for sure. I think it's definitely been a really good season. I think they've overachieved from where we thought they were going into the season. It's hard to argue against that. We've definitely seen some growth from a lot of people, especially Josh. Seen some really good things from the coordinators as well, and hopefully we can bring both of them back. But I think for me, the big thing in this game is, I want to see how aggressive McDermott is and Babichar, man. Can someone on the defense make a play that turns this game? You've seen it a couple times in the regular season when we beat the Chiefs. The defense has made a play, whether it's Taron Johnson, the interception, whether it was Terrell Bernard, the interception. I want to see who can do that in this game. Or a sack or something like that in a key situation. So that's been the letdown for me in previous years. Can Bobby Babich change that? Can some of the different personnel that we have this year change that? That's what I'm really going to be watching. I don't worry too much about the offense and Josh. They've done a really good job against Kansas City, and especially in the playoffs in general. So for me, it's the defense. Who can step up.
Yeah, those are good points. We had talked about, we posted earlier today in our keys to victory is just don't be conservative, be aggressive, like fourth down calls, defensively, offensively, it doesn't matter what it is. Just you can't beat the Chiefs by kicking field goals either or punting from their 40-yard line. So that's really going to be something to watch. And I think McDermott's been pretty aggressive all year for the most part. So I hope he doesn't just change that because we're playing the Chiefs in the playoffs.
No, I totally agree with you. All right, so score predictions, man. What do you got?
Man, I went back and forth on this. So my heart tells me the Bills are going to win. My brain tells me the Bills are going to lose. Just given the history of it all, right? So I'm going to give both. But I really want to say it's going to be like a 31-29 game. The Bills squeak it out, and I think for the first time the narrative is going to be that the defense stopped Mahomes from scoring at the end of the game.
So they're going to have the ball at the end, and
it's going to have the ball. Either it's going to be a fourth down.
So you think it's going to be a 2-point game? Chiefs have the ball at the end, and the Bills are going to keep them from even kicking a field goal? Wow.
Like I said, the narrative's going to flip somehow, man. It popped into my head today. I was like, sure. Now,
there's going to be some serious, heart attacks going on Bills Mafia.
100%.
Mahomes gets the ball with 2 point, down 2 points with time.
Think about how close it was last week. Like the Ravens recover that onside kick. They have the ball at the 50-yard line with down 2 points with the best kicker in NFL history.
Yep.
So let's hope it doesn't come to that. But I would love to see the script flipped and McDermott and Babbage execute defensively. Let's bit them in the ass for two of the three playoff games. But my brain's telling me it's probably not going to be that. It's probably going to be like a Bills 23, Chiefs 26 kind of football game, and the Chiefs just run the clock out with 5 minutes left, and that's the end of the game. And the Bills have to score 30 to win this game, in my opinion.
I totally agree. I think if whoever scores 30 wins this game. I do have it going back and forth too. I've gone back and forth like 20 times. Initially, I wanted to go Chiefs 27, Bills 24. But I actually flipped it, and I have the Bills winning 31-27. And I think it's going to be more, it's like a 27-24 game, and the Bills have a late touchdown drive or something. And they either end with the touchdown instead of the field goal to tie it, or there's not enough time for the Chiefs to go down the field and score a touchdown. So that's how I have it. Even though that's more heart than logic, but I do think this is a special year. I think this is a really good team. I think they know they're on a mission, man. I really do. I don't think they're going to be nervous for this game. I think they're going to be ready to go. They're familiar with the Chiefs. They're familiar with Arrowhead. So I'm expecting them to come out and take it to Kansas City. I think my only way I'm disappointed in this game is if they come out flat. They make a lot of mistakes, penalties, turnovers. Like that's the only way I leave this game disappointed. If they play a clean game like they have and they just come up short, then so be it. I don't think that's the end all be all, right? They're going against one of the best, we could say dynasty now at this point, right? One of the best dynasties in the history of football. So I don't think there's any shame in that on the road, but I feel like they should be competitive. They should be in it, and they should have a shot to win it. And we'll see if they can make the plays at the end to do it.
Yeah. I want to say one more thing before we close out, and that is I know on Third Manageable they have a segment where they talk to the players. I'm going to talk to the NFL and the referees. Stay out of this game. The NFL assign a referee.
Unless it's to help the Bills.
I don't want them to help the Bills. I want to just Like, take
Could
them
you
off
imagine
the
if
field.
the narrative is like the Bills and Josh, Allen and the Bills only won or got over the hump because the refs bailed them out on some
Yeah,
ridiculous
because
call?
Kadarius Toney lined up a toe off sides or
Well,
something.
at least
like,
that was like you could see it, but
yeah.
yeah, I mean, like even
But
the
like,
pass interference or something, like
but
that'd be
like,
brutal, brutal.
just stay out of the game. Stay out of both sides. Like, don't call any holdings. Call the obvious stuff, like
Yeah,
roughing the passers that are 25 minutes late. But like, just stay out of the game. I think the NFL assigned a crew that hopefully will stay out of this game. They kind of heard the critics over the last couple of weeks. So
here's one for you. Would you, as a Bills fan, would you rather lose this game or lose the Super Bowl?
lose the Super Bowl.
Right.
Yeah,
There were
that's
some
easy.
people who were trying to argue that they would rather lose this game so the Bills didn't lose like their 5th Super Bowl and have to go through that and all again. I just don't understand that, man. I would so much rather go to the Super Bowl. Plus the narratives of getting over the hump, beating the Chiefs, and
like,
making it to a Super Bowl is huge. I mean, not many people make it to Super Bowls, let alone win one.
and no offense, the only thing that annoys me more than Dolphins fans about their undefeated season could potentially be the Chiefs three-peating.
Right.
I
Yep.
don't want.
Man, thank God they're not undefeated right now going into this game. Like, could you imagine that narrative?
I think it'd be. I think it would help the Bills almost though.
You think
it's
there'd be so
hard.
much pressure? But
It's so hard, man.
Yeah, but it's not like they're not a well, oiled machine at this point. Or
So is New England.
Yeah.
I
don't
mean,
know.
Randy Moss, Tom Brady, that defense, Belichick, like that
Yeah, but
was.
that was more offensive year though.
Yeah,
So.
but yeah,
All right,
give
well,
it a go, man.
Next up for Do Champions is Hockey Hotline with Matt Dygert and Beyond 716 tomorrow 10 a.m. Tune in for some Sabres hockey dumpster fire, dude. They're gonna go over the train wreck that is the last week of Sabres hockey and
brutal.
talk about some news. There's a big trade in the NHL tonight. Obviously doesn't involve the Sabres because our GM doesn't do anything, but they're going to talk about Sabres, so join them in the misery 10 a.m. tomorrow morning on our socials and our YouTube page. After Hockey Hotline tomorrow night is Matt Dygert and Student Body Right. They're going to be doing a special edition of Third and Manageable. I think it's going to be live from Ilio DePaulo's at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So tomorrow, Saturday night, they're going to do their preview of the AFC Championship game, give you their thoughts. Definitely check out their show. It's always fun when they do the live show at Ilio DePaulo's. You never know what guests they're going to bring on. They always got something up their sleeves. So check that out. And then immediately after the AFC Championship game, hopefully we're celebrating, but there will be a post-game show on Do Champions YouTube and socials, so definitely look out for that and come join us after the game. We might have the call-in line open, so you can call in with your thoughts or chat us live with your thoughts, and we'll either be sulking or celebrating. So definitely come join us for the post-game show. And then again, No One to Blame, the betting show Sunday. I want to say it's noon Eastern. It might be 11 Eastern, but I want to say noon Eastern. Come join us, man. It's a really fun show. We talk all things NFL betting. We'll go over both games. We'll talk about all the player props, all that stuff. It's a really fun show with Kevin and Jesse and myself. Don's been on that show before. It's really fun. So come join us for No One to Blame. It'll be on all our socials as well. I want to thank our show sponsor all season, Happy Holiday and Mackenzie Tree Farms, for supporting the Buffalo Blueprint all season long. The show would not be possible without their support. So really appreciate Happy Holidays and Mackenzie Tree Farms for that. And then join me next week for the next edition of the Buffalo Blueprint. Hopefully it will be talking about the Super Bowl and getting prepared for the Super Bowl matchup. Otherwise, it'll be getting ready for the offseason and probably a year in review if the Bills lose. So hopefully it's victorious in previewing the Super Bowl. But that'll be next week, probably Friday night again, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And I'm sure I'll have a guest as well for the next edition of the Buffalo Blueprint. Please like, subscribe on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram at Do Champions, and then also myself at Jake FB Data. Don, do you want to plug your social?
Yeah, it's Do Don 8. Make sure to include that 8. We're not going to get into the specifics of that. We found out later.
Yes, make sure you add the number 8 at the end.
The number
Do
8
Don.
at the end. 8. Yeah, you can follow me there. I've been posting my weekly best bets. I think I'm at like 60% for the season. I did miss last week because I was on vacation and running socials at the same time, but probably going to post that tomorrow. And that's really all I got. Jake, I hope I see you and anybody listening in Buffalo in 2 weeks. I think we're going to go to Buffalo.
Got it.
It seems like a blast.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Let's
Go
hope I see you
Bills.
there, and go Bills. Hope I see you there, and maybe we'll be at the airport after a Bills Super Bowl win. That would be pretty sick in 0-degree weather. So, go Bills, and we'll talk.
Go Bills. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate it.
For the best Italian food in Western New York, Elliot Apollos, call 716-825-3675. The Lardon Construction Group.
Fubo TV, the official streaming service of Do Champions. FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Do Champions.
For all your summertime needs, beauty pools, as well as kayak pools.
CX Chronicles, your total customer solutions focused manager. W.GG, the official energy drink of Do Champions.
Hey, Sons of Erie, our artwork looks better on your walls. Hamburg Brewing, please visit our tap room on Boston State Road, Hamburg, New York. And finally,
Fat Boy Surf Club for all your surfing needs.
Come on, man. Only on Do Champion Network.
Everything you need, nothing you don't. Some may like if you just won't. Everything you need, nothing you don't. Some may like if you just won't. Buffalo Blueprint for analytics and new shit. Check pen in hand, mic in his hand. Welcome to the Buffalo Blueprint. Everything you need. Everything you need. Everything you need, nothing you don't. Some may like it, you just won't. Everything you need, nothing you don't. Some may like it, you just won't. Buffalo Blueprint for analytics and new shit. Jake pen in hand, mic in his hand. Welcome to the Buffalo Blueprint. Everything you need.